Okay, this is a good one. This is a good one, actually. So, Paulina Pinsky has moved back home. She was living in New York, and now she's moved back here to LA, and we talk about it. She is 76 days sober as we record this episode, and she talks about her path to sobriety, what led her to deciding she was going to stop smoking weed and drinking, and what that process has been like for her. I think this is a very good and powerful conversation about hitting a bottom. Everybody's bottom is different. This is about her bottom. This is about her decisions and the process in which she has gone through to stay sober. This is about what she's learning about herself. This is about that 10-year period of growth that she started at 19 and she's 29 now and what that looks like. We just talk about so much. I just feel like Paulina and I could talk all day long. And we did. This is a long podcast. So I think this is one worth paying attention to if you have children, because it is a great example of being a good parent when your kid is off in a ditch. I think her parents definitely were like, come on home. Let's get you feeling better. And I think to identify Paulina's bravery and her strength in realizing she needed help and asking for it. As a parent, it's good to see both sides of that story, to see how you can be strength for your child and to see how strong your child could be when they're in crisis. So, I don't know. We talked about probably way more than that, but it was a really great 2.5 hours. I love Paulina. She's going to come back soon and talk about dating in her age group. And I think we're going to talk about, what else was it she said she wanted to talk about? Something else. Anyway, she'll be back because now she's living here. So I'm just going to have her come in every couple weeks. So I hope you enjoy her as much as I do, because I think she's absolutely lovely. And I love her honesty and openness. I love her willingness to share the vulnerable parts of who she is. I love that she recognizes that she came from a place of privilege. And I think it's good for us to know that no matter your privilege or lack thereof, we all go through similar human emotions and experiences, and we all change in very similar ways. So I love this podcast. I love this conversation. I love Wife of the Party. I'm so grateful that I get to do this all the time. And I am grateful to you for listening, for commenting, for sharing. I'm just really, really grateful. So thank you for showing up every week, and just thank you. I hope you enjoy this episode with Paulina Pinsky. You do look adorable. I love your scarf and your socks and your shoes and your style and your hair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel good today.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Do you not feel good every day?
I've been having good days lately. I can't say 76 days ago I felt good, but today I'm 76 days sober.
What? That's amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sober from what?
Weed, alcohol, everything. Weed was... I gotta kiss the mic. Sorry, I probably get my lipstick all over my face by the end of this, but that's probably a good thing.
No worries. No judgment.
It's a sign of a good time.
That's right. Without weed.
Without weed, yep.
Well, how often were you smoking weed or eating it?
Every day. Every day.
And why were you doing that?
Good question. I think I haven't been asked that question. Why? But I guess I should think about why. I mean, our conversation we last had, and you were talking about your experience with alcohol, and I definitely identify as both an alcoholic and a marijuana addict.
Okay.
And so marijuana initially was, I think, a solution to my drinking.
Okay.
In that I was getting migraines and I couldn't drink. And marijuana helped me cope with the pain of migraines. And also in my early 20s, I was dating a personal trainer who lived at home, as you do in your early 20s.
Of course.
And Did
he also drive a Jeep?
No, he didn't have a car.
Bert has this theory that all personal trainers drive Jeeps.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Anyway.
I believe it. He hated driving. He was a New Yorker. So,
okay.
And he was a big weed guy. Mm-hmm. And for our 1-year anniversary, we went to Boulder. And he was like, you can't tell my parents that we're smoking, because he had to drop out of school because of his marijuana addiction.
Oh my, okay.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll hold that secret. And we proceeded to get a lot of weed, and I got incredibly stoned. And he wasn't getting as stoned as I was, because I didn't have, the tolerance or the experience, and he resented me for it.
Oh my.
And so that was my introduction to weed. Huh. Beautiful, glamorous, wonderful. I was
going to say, it doesn't sound super healthy.
No.
But I don't know if an introduction to weed is ever healthy. I mean, I have no problem with weed or alcohol.
Yeah.
Anything harder than that, I kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a problem with it, but it makes me very nervous. I feel like there's a different commitment and like addiction possibility once you get past the normalized drugs, I guess,
right?
Which are weed and alcohol.
Well, I guess it feels, I don't know. I've had people be like, marijuana's not addictive, or you're not a marijuana addict, or whatever it is. And to that I say, I couldn't stop. I wanted to stop. I couldn't stop. And I guess, it's weird, because I'm sort of in this moment where prior to today, I couldn't remember the love I had for it. And like, I think I was granted the gift of desperation. And so it was like adverse reaction. Like, I can't do it, you know? And like, that isn't to say that other people can't and whatever. I'm not going to proselytize. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your body.
Yeah.
But it's kind of this weird full circle thing because of who my dad is. And, the first 18 years of my life, I was absolutely terrified. I did nothing illegal. I didn't start drinking until I was like 18, which is late for most people.
Yeah, it is totally.
Because, my dad would be like, your brain stops developing when you start using, he's spouting all these statistics at home. And so I knew better. Right. And one of my earliest memories is when I was a kid, I would go on rounds with my dad. And we'd go to Huntington Hospital, and I'd like hold his hand, and we'd like walk through the linoleum floored halls, and it smelled like antiseptic. And I'd sit on the bed of some like old woman, and she'd like tell me how cute I was or whatever. But this one time, I went to Los Encinas with him, where he was chief of medical staff at the rehab center. And there we weren't like allowed to like leave the nurses station. And this heroin addict came in wrapped in a baby blanket. Pink baby blanket, and just threw a shit fit because they wouldn't give her more drugs. And that scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm 8. She looks old. Like, I can't differentiate age. And it kind of just supplemented everything that my dad was already saying.
Right.
And so when I got to high school, I wasn't super popular in that I didn't get invited to parties, because I would just like I had my dad telling me, like, if you get arrested, I'm not going to bail you out, kind of thing. And so the stakes just felt too high. And also, like, I was perfectionistic and like figure skating and 3 APs and whatever. So it's been kind of this weird full circle thing where it's like, I think once I left home, it was like a reaction to as what happens to everybody when they leave home. It's just kind of like, fuck all y'all. I'm going to do the exact opposite of what you told me.
Yeah. It's about figuring out who you are.
Yeah.
I think what they don't tell you when you're in high school or whatever, I don't know who's supposed to tell you this, if it's your parents or if there's I feel like every school, public or private, should have a what to expect when you're adulting class that tells you about money, relationships, and mental health. Like, it just kind of runs the gamut of here's what's going to happen. You're going to have freedom for the first time ever, and it's going to be addictive in and of itself. And you're going to go off the rails a little bit. And most kids don't go to college and just stay the straight and narrow. They really figure out who they are.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you go through some really deep, hard shit. And, my 20s until I was probably 28, from 18 to 28. So that 10-year period was like a metamorphosis. And no one tells you that could happen. It doesn't happen for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people marry their high school sweetheart and are happy the rest of their whole lives.
Yeah.
But for me, from age 18 to 28, I changed 8 ways to Sunday. I mean, like, I changed so many times.
Yeah.
I was in alcohol, out of alcohol. Sober, no longer sober, and drinking very healthfully and responsibly. I was vegetarian.
Wow.
I cut my hair off and dressed like a boy for a long time.
Yeah.
I had a date rape in that time.
Yeah.
I found therapy in that time. I read all these self-help books in that. It was such an intense, like, on every level.
Yeah.
Learning, growing, failing, falling down, sucking, hating myself.
Yeah.
Figuring out what butter to buy. Does it matter what butter you buy? I don't know if it matters what butter you buy, but now I don't know what butter to buy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah.
But I think it happens to so many people and no one talks about it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I sat down and I think I'm very new to talking about my sobriety, as it is very new, you know, and who I was at day 30. Like, I couldn't go a day without napping. I was quick to cry. Like, I couldn't, emotional.
Of course.
Like being in a room with someone felt so draining because it was like, I was experiencing since I was like, I've been dulling my senses since I was 18.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's why you were using weed.
Yeah. And, I want to thank you for saying all that, because that articulates exactly what I'm going through. I'm 29 and it's like, I started eating disorder recovery at 29. I mean, sorry, 19. And so you're 18 to 28, mine's 19 to 29.
Exactly.
And I feel like I've been for people in this lifetime.
And there is nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
because you know what happens once you get to the other side of it? Or this is what happened for me. I had an absolute certainty of who I was. Absolutely certain. Immovable, unshakable.
Yeah.
This is before I met Bert.
Yeah.
Who I was, what my value system really was.
Yeah.
Because I made it based on all this bullshit.
Yeah.
Good and bad bullshit that
Yeah.
I went through for that 10-year period. And, someone said to me when I was in New York, I was studying acting, and the acting teacher said, expect it to take 10 years to start really being good at this. And I think you can apply that to a transformation. Like, if you make the decision, I'm going to go into treatment for eating disorder, expect it to take 10 years for a transformation. And the pot is part of the 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you start from now, because you have all this growth behind you already. And then when you hit that 10-year mark, I think things start alleviating and opening up.
Yeah.
And this is just my personal theory. I am no expert.
No.
I am no doctor. I'm not your dad. But
he doesn't know everything.
Well, no, nobody knows everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that you'll come out of this knowing exactly who you are.
Well, I'm already feeling it.
Yeah,
and I think what you're saying, like, I feel in sobriety, I'm very new to it, of course. And like, I have so much to learn, and I need to stay humble in that, like, the moment you're like, I have sobriety down is the day that you use. Right.
Yeah, totally.
And so, I'm only asking for 24 hours at a time, and I'm snapped into the sense of presence that I've never had in my entire life. Someone said to me early on in my sobriety, if you have one foot in the future and one foot in the past, you're pissing on the present. And that has like totally changed my life.
Brilliant.
Because I was future tripping constantly, or I was ruminating on something that happened 6 years ago. And anytime I find myself future tripping or ruminating, it's just like, oh, I'm pissing on the present, and the present is all I have.
Yeah.
But in this bout of recovery, or this ongoing recovery, I feel so thankful to my eating disorder recovery, because I have a framework to work from.
Right.
And honestly, like, doing this podcast with you last October.
Was it that long?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
No.
Because you were sort of like, because I was promoting the book, and then you were kind of the podcast I did by myself. And then that really opened so many doors for me.
It did?
Yes. Seriously, I got clients from you.
You did?
I got Artist Way started. Like, you sponsored Sarah.
Oh,
who's
I got
doing
the best
fantastically
email from her.
Did you?
Oh, it was so lovely.
Good. She's fantastic.
I need to respond, Sarah. I'm so sorry I haven't responded. It's because I want to have the space to actually respond. And I feel like I'm, I haven't had the space
sweat.
yet, but I got it. It was a beautiful
She's
email.
so fantastic. And so many people applied.
Good.
So many people applied. It just like catapulted that. And like, thank God I had that. Like, my life literally detonated the week before Artist Way started.
It did?
Mm-hmm. And so
Why?
Well, oh God. So
I mean, if you don't want to talk about it,
I want to talk
cool,
about it, but I can only really talk about it in sort of like abstract terms,
Got
both
it.
because like
other people are involved.
Other people are involved.
Yeah.
And also every time I tell it in minute detail, it re-traumatizes me.
Oh, totally.
But I will one day, we can sit down and I'll tell you the whole thing because I would like to tell you about it.
Okay.
But basically what happened is we ran out of weed.
Oh.
And we were like, sober Christmas. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were going to be like, so there was a car accident.
Well, buckle up. It does involve a car.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my now ex-fiance and I were going to drive from New York to New Orleans.
I remember that.
Yeah. Christmas with his family.
Yep.
And over the course of the 3-day drive, he went into withdrawal.
Oh boy.
And became increasingly illogical, verbally combative, and suicidal.
Oh my God.
And, you know,
withdrawal
I was
from weed?
Mm-hmm, he was taking up to 100 milligrams of edibles a day.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
For people who don't know anything about weed, and I don't know much.
California legally mostly sells 5 milligram edibles.
Exactly. 100.
Wow. Yeah. And like substance abuse and addiction is progressive. Like it like, of course we were using together. So I was aware of like his drug use, but like October, like Halloween on, it just like accelerated in this way that was just like so out of control. And, you know, doing this podcast with you and like watching it, because like during that whole like media, whatever I was doing for my dad's book, I was mostly
for your book,
for my book. I know. It's so dumb. I'm like, I didn't like in my head, I didn't write a book.
Yes, you did.
I know, but I did. I need to like acknowledge that.
Yes, you did.
Well, that book fucking saved my life.
Yeah.
Because I was in that car and he was screaming at me and I was holding onto this driving the steering wheel saying, screaming like I've never screamed before. Like, I don't yell, but you're making me yell. And he said, if you are going to have a panic attack, you need to pull over. And then I remembered I was driving. And then I was like, oh, TCB. I don't trust him anymore. Where's that compassion? He is not showing me compassion and he is not respecting my boundaries when I told him to stop yelling at me over and over and over again. Wow. And so because I had been preaching TCB for months, it was like this, like, it was an awakening. It was like, it forced me to kind of, and I was thinking about Isla and how, you know, she restructured her friends based on that principle. And here I was preaching that idea in a relationship with someone that I no longer trusted, who was not showing me compassion and wasn't respecting my boundaries.
Wow. Paulina?
And I know.
That's amazing. No, I'm impressed. You said, I know, like you're disappointed. Why would you ever be disappointed? That is the perfect example for people to hear about how, I was just talking about this on the podcast earlier. Sometimes when you get information, your job is to pay attention. And when you're paying attention, you go, this is a moment where that thing I learned should be applied. Yeah. That's what you did. Yeah. That's exactly what you did.
I guess I just feel disappointed. I feel disappointed in how I let it detonate. Like that I wasn't proactive prior to that moment. And that's like perfectionistic and like things like had I ended the relationship 6 months sooner, I wouldn't be sober today. You know what I mean?
Do that. Yeah, you can't do that.
So, that drive, I got him to New Orleans, and an hour outside of New Orleans, we were in a gas station. I'm going to tell you my bottom. So trigger warning, bottom story. Every vomit, diarrhea, tampons will be involved.
Oh my.
So he pulled over to a gas station to get gas, and I got out of the car and I like felt this like chill run throughout my body and my teeth started chattering. And I realized I was starting to have a panic attack. And so I wasn't even like conscious. And I like, you know how in like Southern gas stations, there's always like that like legally mandated patch of grass that's like covered in like cigarette butts and like used condoms and crushed cans and things that. So I like beeline to that patch of grass and I just fell to my knees and I was rocking and I was saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But it sounded like I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And I knew that I had to say it until I believed it. And I started praying to like all my dead grandparents. And once I was able to like convince myself that I could do this, I stood up and I literally like held on to like a thin limb tree.
Aww.
And I went into the gas station and I like kicked open the stall door and there was just a bloody tampon in the toilet. So
gross.
I projectile vomited McDonald's McNuggets into the toilet. Then I shat my brains out because I was having a panic attack. And I literally like took a selfie in the mirror being like, never forget this. Like never forget this feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to get back in the car, had another panic attack, back to the patch of grass. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Praying to all my dead grandparents, holding onto the tree. And that was like, there's this memoir. Well, there's a memoirist named Mary Carr, who's like my absolute famous, like favorite.
I've heard of her.
Oh, she's the most brilliant writer ever. Memoir queen, want to be here when I grow up. And she has written 3 memoirs, Liars Club, Cherry, and Lit. And Lit is her memoir about alcoholism. And she has this scene in which she falls to her knees, and that was like her bottom. And when I fell to my knees, like it wasn't conscious, you know, it was more of just like, I there was nothing left. Right. And because I had read her experience, I understood that I was experiencing a shift and I do not believe God is a man in the sky. I just don't.
Yeah.
And so when I use the word God, I mean like nature or grand universal sport, like source higher power, like good orderly
your
direction.
Higher self, something. Yeah.
And so in that moment, like I was turning it over to God, and like God for me is like nature. So holding onto the tree, like my ancestors, like calling to my grandparents to protect me. Like, so whether or not I recognized it, like I was letting in God. And, you know, we get them to New Orleans, details that I won't go into. They're batshit though. And that was day 3 of sobriety for me.
Wow.
And so I flew home the next day at 6 a.m. And when I got to baggage claim at LAX, I've never been more excited to be at LAX in my life. Like I hate that airport. It's a terrible airport.
It's terrible.
It's so bad. But I was just like, oh my God, like thank God I get to drive 55 minutes home, you know?
Right.
And I got to baggage claim and Elvis's Blue Christmas was playing.
Oh.
And I just like, I almost lost my shit. And I was just like, I gotta get home. And at that point, like my shoulders are hunched, like I'm not blinking. Like I was just hyper traumatized at that point. And I got home and I like, as soon as I saw my mom, I just like fell to the floor and collapsed. So yeah, I had a really traumatic bottom.
Yeah.
But like, at this point, like I'm so thankful to it because, you know, I was going to do a dry January or whatever. And like, I would have done like a week, if that, and I would have given up or whatever it is. And I just feel like there has been such a fundamental shift in terms of how I view myself, how I view others, how I guess I think the sort of fundamental shift is that the person that I thought I was being distorted by how much weed I was smoking. And now I feel like my self-concept is actually reflective in how I am being. Right. Like there is an alignment that is happening.
That's great.
So that's like the long story short.
That's great.
That's been the last 76 days for me.
Transformative, powerful.
I would say so.
Intense.
Very intense.
Roller coaster-esque.
Yeah.
You know what though? Something I learned that I was doing that I didn't know I was doing until later is figuring out what I valued in life. Yeah. What do I value? And making sure that I honor that little treasure chest of values. And some of that is, you know, honesty and integrity. And of course I value those things. But some of it is like, you know, a good ice cream cone. I really value a good ice cream cone. I mean, like that's like high on my list of like, if you're going to give me something good, not some crappy one. Yeah. I don't want to go to, you know, convenience store. No. Yeah. I want a good ice cream cone. Yeah. But to be able to define those things for yourself, sometimes you have to get to the tree hugging place to really be able to say, well, what really matters? Yeah. Because this other stuff is just noise. But what really matters is what I'm going to clearly define and focus on.
Yeah.
And accept nothing less. I was in a really bad writing partnership with a partner long time ago. And I had just started therapy because I figured out I started therapy for the first time, the second time. The first time I was in therapy, I was in my 20s in New York. And then I moved here and I just didn't feel the need for it and found myself in a relationship with a writing partner that was very unhealthy for me. And I met Bert and realized I think I may be in love with this guy, but I don't really know how to be married because I have like 7 divorces between my 2 parents.
Damn.
And I need to get some like mentorship, guidance, help with that because I am sure I will be dysfunctional if I don't get some help. So I'm going to go to therapy. And I asked her this really great question. I said, why am I in this relationship with this writer who is like my mother? And she goes, because that's what you think love is. And until you figure out that's not what love is, and what do you think, define, what do you think love is, you'll keep doing that over and over and over and over again.
Dramatic reenactment.
Yes. And I was like, oh, so all I have to do is like write down the do's and don'ts, so to speak, which sounds so stupid. But here are the do's and don'ts of a relationship, or what I will accept and what I will not accept. And to define that.
Yeah.
And then, hey, Bert has a lot of similarities to my mom. He's very self-absorbed. He can be very narcissistic. He's extremely reactive. But the pieces that he has that she never had are deal breakers for me. He's extremely self-reflective. He comes back to me after he's made an ass of himself and say, I made a real ass of myself.
Yeah.
And here's what's really happening. And I value that. And he's never leaving me. And that meant something to me, that I believe the person I was attached to really is never going to leave. My mom left constantly.
Yeah.
So to be able to define those things, I defined those things before I met Bert. Like I want someone I know is not going to leave. That's in it for the right reasons and for the long haul. I want someone I believe will never lie to me. I want someone I can trust, and I want someone that I can have fun with.
Yeah.
And until I had that perspective, and I also had kind of a rough ending with my writing partner. It was really rough, but sometimes that roughness helps you draw a clear line for yourself.
Yeah. Like you have
know?
no other choice but to draw a boundary.
Well, not just that, but to be very clear what that boundary is. So not that it's relative to that person. That boundary that I drew after her was relative to me, where I went, oh, okay. These were the red flags you saw and did it anyway.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm having like a physical reaction.
Right? I was like, did I just say something?
Oh my God. Because like, I'm like the queen of seeing a red flag and being like.
And doing it anyway.
Or being like, I can change that.
And that is a lie.
It is a lie.
Yes.
Well, also like, what is grandiose self-concept, right? That like, I'm the solution, that I'm the one that's going to be able to change somebody.
Well, I think that's part of perfectionism.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I've talked about this recently too. I, at a very young age, had to be in charge. So then I was talking to someone about this, this is so stupid, but I'm starting to not like certain ways I'm aging physically. And I think that's pretty normal and natural for a lot of women.
Yeah.
I'm not a vain person, but there's parts of my body and my face where I go, this should not be happening.
Yeah.
I should be able to handle this.
Yeah.
I should be able to fix this. I will not have plastic surgery, but this is a problem.
Yeah.
Why can I not? Shouldn't I just be able to drink like 4 gallons of carrot juice and this be fixed? I should be able to do this. Yeah. And then I was with my therapist. I was like, I'm so frustrated at these things that my logical brain knows I can't possibly fix.
Yeah.
I'm 52 this year. None of this
Congratulations. That's amazing.
But the person who's been in charge of everything and can move mountains I don't really process, I can't move that mountain. And so she said to me, which I thought was beautiful, you have to hold your proficiencies and your inadequacies and love them both.
Damn.
You can't fix the problem that you're talking about. You can't do it. There's nothing you can do. So you have to hold that and love it.
Surrender to it.
Yeah, and just love it. But that piece of you that goes, I can fix this, is beautiful. It makes you achieve. It makes you want for things. Gives you drive. It gives you so many positive things. Sometimes you have to pay attention, though, and say, no, not this time.
Yeah.
This time, that part of me is not in my best interest.
Yeah.
And to be able to discern, because I've had many friends, because our writing partnership started with a friendship, and I kept the friendship a bit at arm's length because of the red flags. And then our creative souls really worked well together. We were we did two opposite things for the same purpose. And I'm a great collaborator. So I got into this relationship deeper than I knew I should have.
Yeah.
Did it anyway for this process. Well, since then, people have shown up with those red flags, and I go, oh, no. No, that will not be happening.
Yeah.
I don't care about the creative process. That will not be happening. No. So
Julia Cameron calls those people crazy makers.
Oh, totally.
And like, there's a whole week on like identifying crazy makers and sort of like eliminating them or making distance from them. And of course, like I identified my crazy makers and then did not eliminate them. And then they made craziness and then I had to eliminate them. And that's sort of like, I think I'm inspired to hear that you're able to identify those red flags and be like, nope, stop. Right. Like that's kind of, I think the next level up for me is like identifying the red flag and then protecting myself from them.
Well, I was 32 before that happened. So don't think like I showed up that way. I was like 32.
Yeah.
When I went, pump the brakes. I will not be doing this again.
Yeah.
Like I've repeated this cycle over and over again in romantic relationships and friendships. And the buck is stopping here. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it again. But I was 32 before I got to that place. And I'd been through that 10 years of metamorphosis and really figuring out who I was. And, you know, when you grow up with a lot of dysfunction, it takes so much time to just unbraid the braid.
Yeah.
You know, and to just get all the hair combed out straight. And then you can figure out how to rebraid the braid in a way that's beautiful for you.
I love that.
It just takes time to do all of that. But in between 28 and 32, I was still in all this dysfunction.
Yeah.
You know, and we're so impatient, I think, as people who are driven and who want, you know, some people are hungry for life. I was always very hungry for life.
Me too.
And that causes you to be impatient sometimes.
Yeah.
For your own growth and development.
Yeah.
And you look back at it. I look back at it and I go, oh, I wish I'd been more patient with myself. But you can't know that when you're in it, you know? This episode of Wife of the Party is brought to you by ShipStation. I love ShipStation. We have been using ShipStation for years. It is linked with our Squarespace account, which is what runs both mine and Bert's websites. And we ship all our merchandise with ShipStation. It is so easy, but you don't actually just have to use it for that. You can use it for your personal mailing needs as well. I shipped out so many Christmas gifts over the holidays through ShipStation, and it makes life so easy because you just type in an address or you can import it from your address book and you just kind of put in the dimensions of your package and push print. It's super, super easy. All you got to do then is drop it off at the post office and call it a day. I absolutely love ShipStation. I can't say enough good things about it. So ship more in less time with ShipStation and use my offer code WIFE, 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 to get a 60-day free trial. That's 2 months free, no hassle, stress-free shipping. Just go to ShipStation.com, click on the microphone at the top of the page, and type in WIFE. ShipStation. Make ship happen. This episode of Wife of the Party is also brought to you by Me Undies. I don't know if you have any Me Undies, but me have some Me Undies and me likey Me Undies. They're so comfortable. They fit me perfectly. They don't ride up my booty because I do not wear thongs because I am an old lady. Not really, but I just don't wear thongs. So the underwear that I wear are so comfortable and they're very kind of flattering in their comfort. I would like to say that I got to hold on to all my MeUndies, but unfortunately, my 14-year-old stole my MeUndies because I don't know, they're 2 sizes too big for her because my booty is definitely bigger than hers. But they're so comfortable, she just took them. They go from extra small to 4XL in sizes, and they're all just so comfortable. So check out MeUndies. Give it a try. MeUndies promises if you're not comfortable with any product for any reason, you can return your order for a full refund within 45 days. MeUndies has a great offer for my listeners. For any first-time purchasers, you can get 15% off and free shipping right to your door. That's pretty great. 15% off and free shipping. And you always have to have a new underwear. I mean, it's just something you're always going to need. So to get 15% off your first order, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to meundies.com/wife. That's meundies.com/wife. Happy panty shopping.
Something I've been thinking a lot about, like, I mentioned that I feel like I've been 4 different people in this life.
Yeah.
And on a cellular level, like biologically, our cells regenerate every 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so my cellular data at 7 was different than at 14, and from 14 to 21 and 21 to 28. And so spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I feel like I'm, 4 different people, but literally biologically, I've been 4 different people.
Completely, yeah.
And, the cellular regeneration process, like as you age, like it just doesn't, defects start happening. The sun comes in and breaks them down or whatever. And I think there's sort of, I've been thinking a lot about death. Mostly, when I first got engaged, all I could think about was death, which red flag number 1. Like I'm going on Instagram, everybody's like, I'm engaged to the love of my life. And I was like, how do I know he's the love of my life? And I'm like, well, we should talk about our wills. And like, all I could think about was death.
How fascinating.
And
I wonder why. Do you know why?
Because it was the wrong choice.
Oh,
because
okay.
I was signing up to my death warrant,
Lord have mercy, lady. That should have been that's not. That's great though, because now you know that self-talk means something.
I was miserable and I was convincing myself that I was the problem, and then he would act chaotically and I'd be like, well, it's my fault or whatever it was. And I felt like I had a rope tied around my waist attached to an anvil, and I had a dull knife and I couldn't cut it fast enough.
No.
And like now I feel such a sense of lightness and appreciation. And so you were talking about impatience. Like I'm definitely an impatient person. But the beauty of recovery and doing Artist Way alongside my recovery is we're on week 9 this week. And so we talk about sort of like filling the form, which is just like sort of showing up every day to do sort of the minute task that is going to serve a larger goal. So whether that, like yesterday, I started working out with my personal trainer again. And I told her one of my goals is I want to be able to do a pull-up. And so literally I just like hung on the bar and then like activated my shoulder blades. And like 4 or 5 years ago, that would have been infuriating to me that like all I could do was just activate my shoulder blades. And like yesterday, it was just like, fuck yeah. Like by the end of it, like, the first time I did it, I could do 2 in a row. And then by the end of it, I could do 5 in a row. And I was like, that's fucking awesome. Like, I was the kid during the presidential fitness test that was like holding on during the flex arm hang, shaking, like afraid I was going to fail. And like, here I am, like excited by sort of the baby step. And that's what I honestly, that is sort of the most exciting change in myself is like the idea of progress over perfection. Because like all alcoholics are perfectionists. They want to control themselves. They want to control the people around them. They want to control the situation. They want to control everything. And everything has to be exactly to the T that they dictate.
Right.
And that is me. Right. And so I've
That's fascinating. I didn't know that. That's why I for sure was not an alcoholic. Because I am not that.
Interesting.
No, I was just in pain.
Yeah.
I needed to numb it.
That's interesting. Sort of like, what's the difference between like having addiction or alcoholism and abusing a substance?
Your dad would be the one to ask.
Yeah.
But I definitely wasn't addicted because once I stopped drinking, I just was like, I stopped drinking and went to therapy. I went to therapy like full tilt. I am broken. Like, this is why I knew that's why I was drinking, is because I was so broken. So I didn't drink for 7 years. And of 4 of those years, I was in therapy. And then 3, I had just moved to LA. And then at a certain point, I went, I actually feel so much better that I'm going to have a drink and see what it does.
Yeah.
You know, because it's been 7 years and I stopped and I literally went, no more. And never,
Wow.
I never had withdrawal, never had a like, God, I wish I could have a drink. I never had that.
Yeah, that's not alcoholism.
What I had was, I want to know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I had that, an insatiable hunger to figure out why I felt so bad.
Interesting.
So I didn't ever really care about alcohol. I think the reason I went to alcohol is because I had no maturity and I had no one to say, I think you're suffering. I had no one to say, hey, you've had kind of a fucked up childhood. Maybe you should talk to somebody. Nobody goes to therapy in rural Georgia. Nobody.
Yeah.
So, and I think I had to mature into a place to go, oh, hold on, there's help out there actually. And before I got there, I just had to numb it. I just had to just drown it. Let's just numb it. Just make it stop talking to me. So once I got tools to say, oh, here's how you make it stop talking to you, I didn't really care about alcohol. I still don't care about alcohol. I may have 2 drinks a month. I'd much rather have a glass of flavored sparkling water.
Yeah.
That's way more enjoyable to me than alcohol. I mean, of course, there are certain circumstances when you're out with girlfriends celebrating someone's birthday, of course, but I don't really give a shit about it. I have no struggle at all.
Yeah.
Mine was full, but I was drinking, like we talked about before, to the point of like really hurting myself.
Yeah.
And hurting other people. So I don't know. It's a different path. It's different that's a different reason for using alcohol.
Yeah.
I think entirely.
Definitely. I mean, it's been interesting, mostly because like my drug of choice was marijuana for like the last 5 years. And most of that was like because I started getting migraines because I was in another bad relationship with the personal trainer. And I was like getting these like, rather than expressing my anger, I was detonating inside my brain and just like paralyzed. And I was starting graduate school. I didn't think I belonged there. I was getting migraines during class, literally have to put my sunglasses on in the middle of a lecture. It was like humiliating. But weed became medicine. It became magic. It was all these things. And it also, I was able to verbalize things that I had repressed.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
And so it felt like this gateway. It was like, oh, I get stoned to talk about things that I will inevitably write about. I couldn't get stoned and write. That didn't happen for me. Like I like submitted one piece that I was like, this is brilliant about clairvoyance. And my graduate school mentor was like, this is incoherent. She was like, what is this? You know?
Oh, wow.
And so I learned fast that like I had to be precise about when I used it. Like I couldn't use it to write.
Right. Used it more to be a creative thinker and then later
or relax or like a big way. I was like, oh, I get stoned and I eat whatever I want. Like I don't have that chatter in my head.
Right.
But then like, you know, the pandemic hit and it was just like weed was, it was like a way to numb out. It was a way to survive. It was, then dabs got involved. And anytime there's dabs involved, you're a marijuana addict. Like I'm here to say that, like, I'm not going to pass judgment on anybody, but like dabs, you have a problem if you're using dabs. Yeah. Do you know what dabs are?
Yeah, I know what they are.
Yeah, they're just...
Well, what are they? I guess we should explain
So
what they are.
dabs are highly concentrated like THC wax that you would essentially have to heat up a glass cup with like metal balls in it and for a minute with a flame torch. And after a minute, you drop the wax in and you put a little cap on and then you inhale the fumes. And it is not comfortable. Like the first time I did it, I felt my soul leave my body.
Oh my God.
And then I projectile vomited onto the couch and the dog.
Jesus.
And then I shook in the tub for 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And then
who wants to do that?
Right. And then I did it again.
Why?
Like that's addiction. But that's addiction, right? Like
But why? Like why is my favorite word. I don't know if you noticed that. But why? Why do you go, oh, I just projectile vomited. Let's do that one more time.
Because regular weed wasn't getting me high anymore.
Oh.
And that's why I'm saying.
So you weren't able to escape.
I wasn't able to escape. And that's also like, it was just there or whatever. We ran out of bud or I didn't have edibles or whatever it was. But I think when you are using something so often that you're no longer able to get the high, that is a moment to look at like, when was the last time I stopped? Am I able to stop? How did I sleep that night? You know, like... So that's the only sort of like judgmental thing I'll say is like if you're using dabs, you're a marijuana addict.
You should reevaluate.
You're right.
Yeah,
right.
You reevaluate.
Think about your relationship to the substance.
Well, let me ask you this. Not because your parents are who they are, but just to ask in general. You know, I think part of your 20s is trying not to rely on your parents.
Mm-hmm.
You're a person in their 20s, not you, but a person is really trying to stand on their own 2 feet. I don't know did you ever say, I should maybe talk to mom and dad about this? Or what would mom and dad think? Not in a like mom and dad are oppressing me way, but in like access their wisdom, because any mom and dad, not any mom and dad, but most relatively healthy, balanced mom and dads have a lot more experience than a child. Even if the child is in their 20s, the mom dad's at least in their 40s.
Yeah.
Then they've had more life experience in general. And it is not an inclination. It was not an inclination for me in my 20s to reach out for my parents for advice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if you ever thought, I should ask or I should talk to them. Or
the weeks preceding my bottom, let me see if I have this note. I
mean, did your parents know you were smoking this much weed? Or
I don't think they knew. I mean, they knew and they didn't know. Like, they didn't think it was
a big deal.
They didn't think it was what it was.
Got it.
But I called my dad. Here we go. I called my dad because I suddenly became very nervous about my health.
Why?
Because I had gotten an MRI and I found out I have like a blood pouch on my liver. And
what does that mean?
I don't know. And my dad told me that I'm fine as long as I don't get kicked in the liver or get in a car accident.
Thanks, Dad.
I was like, okay, well, I'll try to avoid that if I can.
I don't plan on being kicked in the liver.
Yeah.
I don't even know where the liver is.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, from the neck down. That's all I know.
It's this zone. And I was asking my dad, I don't even remember how I said it, because I don't think it was like one of the first days that like I just wasn't stoned at that point, but like my memory is so fuzzy because I was smoking so much. But I just asked him, like, what do I need to worry about with my health? Mm-hmm. And I wrote it in a note so I wouldn't forget, which is good because I can't remember all of it. Mm-hmm. But he said 3 things. I needed to worry about my brain, my heart, and my breasts. Brain, I had to worry about alcohol and weed. So he was saying it.
Yeah.
And then he said low carb, low fat exercise, which I was like,
blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah.
Anytime anybody tells me low carb, I'm like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, right. Who can live like that?
I know. It's just like,
no one can live
unrealistic.
like that. It is.
Heart, he said, you come from horrible vascular history,
God.
so I need to be careful about my heart. Breast cancer, mammogram 35 to 40. And this is where he was saying the low carb / low fat for inflammatory reasons, the adipose cholesterol / fat. So reducing the inflammatory, chronic inflammation increases cancer risk. Conscious eating that works for you, whatever that is, which I will slide into because I actually am like having a revolution in regards to that.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait to hear about that.
It's good. The best exercise is the one you'll do. And exercise is increasing performance over time. Increase the work, exertion, weight, distance, and then increasing on a regular basis. So like, that's just like, but I asked, and I hadn't asked in a really long time. And that was like 2 weeks before that bottom happened. And so I started talking about like specifically that trip when I was here, and I started talking to you, and like, I started talking about my relationship and like my doubts about it and whatever. And so the ball was rolling, and I guess writing the book with my dad was like its own complicated process, and that I like to call it the consent book I didn't consent to.
Why did you not consent to it? What does that mean?
Okay, so
the consent book I didn't consent to. That's brilliant. Okay, I can't wait to hear this. See it's still right here.
I know. I was like, I'm so excited. It's got such a central.
I love that book.
Me too. Now I am like, thank God for that book.
Yeah, totally.
So my mom was like, we're coming to New York. Dad's doing a podcast show at Caroline's on Broadway. We need you to sell t-shirts. And I was like, okay.
I can hear your mom saying that.
So she comes in, and she comes in with this like huge duffel bag, like hockey duffel bag filled with t-shirts, and she plops it on the table, and she's like, here. And then she like walks away, and I'm like, all right, okay, like family business, blah, 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 and I'm like, folding shirts that say like Dr. Drew After Dark. And then the other one says, you shouldn't prolapse your anus, Dr. Drew.
Oh my God.
And my dad comes in and he's like, we sold the consent book today. And I was like, what consent book? And he was like, the consent book, we talked about it. And I was like, I don't remember that. And then he was like, oh, okay, well, we sold it. And that, it was like, poof. And, I was like 3 or 4 months out of my MFA. I had just started teaching at LIM College. So I'm like, oh, great. So I'm teaching 3 classes and now I'm writing a book. And like, I read the pitch and like my name's misspelled in the pitch.
Wait, who wrote all this? Who did all this?
It was my dad's former literary agent.
Okay.
I don't know how much I'm supposed to say, but this guy pitched like Dr. Drew, and my dad was like, oh, well, we need a young person. And my daughter's a writer. Let's tag her on. And like, now I understand my dad's just constantly pitching. Like, now I see it as a gift. At the time, right. I was resentful because I was just
interesting.
But then, I found out that they were going to like pay me an egregious amount of money to write this book. And I was like, okay, like, I'll do it.
I'm good. I'm good.
Like,
I'll do that. Okay, perfect.
But I
can buy a lot of dabs with that.
Right. No, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, I honestly, like, I think that's like around the time that I started dating my ex and he introduced me to psychedelics. And so I kind of like, I think my resentment turned into drug use. And I'm working with my dad. We're, meeting weekly to talk about this book, but I am just like stoned all the time or hungover from doing, research chemicals from the Netherlands or LSD or whatever. Or like drinking or whatever it was. And, I would call him every 6 weeks being like, I'm worried that we don't have a relationship outside of this. Like, I don't want our relationship just to be about work. And like, he would reassure me. But then over time, he like got increasingly more frustrated. And granted, like I was not acting like an adult. I was not like, here I am with like a book deal, like crying every 6 weeks. Like it was just such this like misconnection. And then the pandemic hit. And it was just like, then I went from like being resentful that I wrote this book with my dad to writing a book with someone who got canceled. And then it's just like, then he's going through his thing. I'm on the other side of the country. So it was just like chaos.
Yeah.
So like now I can see it and like I want to, like, I'm sure I'll have perspectives on it that I can't even have perspective on today about like my behavior and how I behaved. And at the end of the day, like I think I utilized the opportunity and showed up for it. And like when it counted, I showed up. You know what I mean? But like I felt a lot of resentment and like rather than,
gratitude.
Well, gratitude, but also rather than like eating my feelings and purging, I was parting my face off and not showing up fully. Right. And so it was sort of the same destructive impulse.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So that being said, like promoting this book, like studying this book and like, because I was stoned when I was writing it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I had to come back to it this past July and read it 3 times and be like, oh yeah, that is what I said.
Right.
And it's still my work, but it's still just like, there is this sort of like disconnect in my brain of like, I wrote a book, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And now that you've explained that whole trajectory, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So then I think what you have to do is just really feel deeply your gratitude for that book.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because not only because of you wrote a book, you're a published author, it was a gift from your dad in a certain way. It was a gift from your dad. It was an amazing experience you can build from. But the gratitude really is about how much you were able to help other people. That's where your gratitude really should come from.
You make me cry. Yeah.
No, but that is the truth because that book's awesome. I love that book.
Thank you.
And through all that you just described, I don't want to say none of that matters because it does matter.
But it does in the grand scheme of things.
But that book helped a lot of people. And if you had to go through that to get that out there, I think you should be really grateful for the opportunity to give on that level. Not everybody has the opportunity to give on that level. It's very special. It's very special. There's a tissue somewhere right there.
I got it.
But I think that's what you need to do.
Yeah, I mean that's the reason, why I started writing, it's like
I have a feeling that's why you started writing because you're doing the artist way, which is what? to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
To find their artist way.
Yeah. Their purpose. Their
you did that already.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, what's sort of illuminating is like, if I was able to like do that, like stoned and high and whatever, like I'm very excited to see what the next thing is. It's like, what am I going to be able to do? And like, obviously I need to stay humble and be like, trial and tribulation and sadness and fear and all those things are going to come along with it. But I just feel gratitude for my sobriety and that it's granting me the clarity to, one, like feel immense gratitude to even have the privilege of helping people and the privilege of writing a book like this. Like no one else out of my MFA program was handed a book deal like that. You know what I mean? And
amen.
Like,
I'm not even religious, but amen.
Yeah. I mean, but I think I felt a lot of shame about it because here I was in a high literary writing program and I'm writing like a commercial YA book, and it shouldn't matter. It's all writing, it's all things. But like the sort of the imposter syndrome that I had at Columbia was manifest in like, oh, I'm just Dr. Drew's daughter no matter what I do. Like it doesn't matter that I have this degree. It doesn't matter that I've like studied the craft. It's like, and granted, I wouldn't have been able to write this book had I not done that.
Sure.
But it was kind of, it's all part of the same monster.
I hear what you're saying. The word shame worries me. I don't like that word.
Yeah.
That word is attached to who you think you are. Guilt is different. Guilt is I did something bad.
Yeah.
Shame is I am bad. I don't like shame. So figure out why you use that word.
Yeah.
You used that
Interesting.
word.
I didn't even realize I used it.
You did. You said the shame I felt. And shame has to do with who you are.
Yeah.
And there is no part of any person on this planet who should really feel shame.
Yeah.
Guilt, totally.
Yeah.
We all screw up and do things that you should feel guilty about. Unless you're like Jeffrey Dahmer. Then you should be ashamed of yourself. Right? How dare you do that? Yeah. The shame, when you really connect and identify that you feel shame, you can change it. But a lot of time, we have a lot of shame we don't even know is there.
Yeah.
And then if you find where you feel, because shame is one of the few emotions that makes me cry. Like when I find it in myself, and then I know that's where I have to heal because it's a lie. That's a lie. So I have built this belief on this thing that's not true. Part of it may be true, and the part of it is true is guilt. And I'll totally accept that. It took me, I was pretty old when I figured this out too. And I don't really know how I figured it out. But I did. At a certain point, I was like, I know what it was. It was about when I was date raped. And I was so ashamed. I had so much deep shame. And I started breaking that apart and going, why am I ashamed? Why do I have shame? Why do I even have any guilt? Okay, I'll accept that I'll take some guilt because I was too drunk. I was flirting. I was. I'll admit to that. But it's not my fault that it went to this other place.
Yeah.
That's not mine.
Yeah.
That ain't me. So take that shame and shove it.
Have you read Daring Greatly by Dr. Brene Brown?
I think I have long time ago. Maybe that's where I came
about
with
shame a lot.
Maybe that's where I got it. Sorry, Dr. Brene Brown. I've stolen it from you. But you see, I listened so well, I made it my own.
No, that's good. Internalize that information.
But yeah, I don't like that you use that word shame.
I'm glad that you picked up on that because I didn't even like I feel like I'm someone who's like processed my shame or whatever. But
I feel like that too, and it comes up all the time.
Yeah.
But if you recognize it, then you can address it.
Yeah.
If you don't recognize it, then you don't ever address it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I definitely felt shame in graduate school about who my dad is because I both felt like it kept me from being high literary or high intellectual or sort of like Paris Review level, right? It's like my proximity to like reality television dad, you know?
Yeah.
And
I understand that.
And so that like, but it's so unwarranted because it was also like I'm in a room of people who already feel shame because they don't feel like they're good enough either.
Right.
And so that's interesting.
That is hard. I mean, I'm listening to you with two children who are in your position, right? And I've always tried to keep their self-esteem separate from their dad.
Yeah.
You guys are not related. And just because he gets it doesn't mean you get it, and vice versa. But the world doesn't let you do that entirely. And so I watch and I hope that we can keep them from feeling those feelings that I think are in some ways unavoidable.
Yeah, it is unavoidable.
It's unavoidable.
But I think the fact that you're cognizant of it and that you're talking to them about it, like, that's huge. Because like when I was in the 3rd grade, I don't know if I've told you this story. I wrote a piece about it.
No, I didn't know this.
When I was in the 3rd grade, my mom looked at me on the way to ice skating practice and said, when you lose your virginity, your dad's going to broadcast it on the radio.
What?
Yeah. Which,
oh
like,
my God.
My mom. But like,
that may not have been the best method, Susan.
No. And like, I understand what she was saying. And I think what she was trying to say is that I was under scrutiny. And as the girl, like, sexually, I would be under scrutiny.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would suffer consequences by proxy or whatever. And it's sort of like the preacher's daughter kind of thing.
Yeah. Watch your back. Sort of.
And so all throughout my childhood, I was like, and I was always like hypersexual and like crushes and whatever, and always had a boyfriend. But I didn't tell anybody about when I did start having sex at 16. I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like interwoven with my eating disorder too. The secretive nature of it. And also just like, my high school boyfriend had self-harming tendencies. So it was like, if you don't harm yourself, I won't vomit. So he was like the only person that knew I was bulimic. And, you know, it was just like a whole codependent. It was my first tango with codependency. And what was kind of both like earth-shattering and also like liberating is that like my deepest, darkest secret, like I exposed myself, and like for 6 months after I published Get Your Teeth Checked, the New York Post picked it up and pulled the quote out of context. And so for years, when you Googled me, the only thing that would come up was Dr. Drew's bulimic and anorexic daughter. Ugh. And so like, no, like he wasn't like she lost her virginity, but the world knew like the actual deep secret that I was holding.
Right.
And so
that's
like,
awful.
It was not good.
Yeah, that's awful.
But at this point now, and especially like, I just started a newsletter called Newly Sober.
I saw it.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like, you know, I don't want to be an authority on sobriety whatsoever, but I feel excited to write for the first time in like years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm kind of just like, okay, I have an angle. Like I kind of need to process this anyways. But I feel liberated in the fact that like nothing I could reveal about myself is as like exploitive or traumatizing as that.
No, totally.
Know?
Yeah.
And it's
can't
kind
get
of
much worse.
Right.
No,
and,
yeah.
And at a certain point, it's like, I feel liberated in the fact that I get to write my story. Right. Like that it's not someone else reporting on me.
Right.
And so that's kind of the turning point I'm at, where I'm just like, I'm trying to process what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing. And like, again, like trying to help people through it. But
you know, something I did is I don't know how much we've talked about my mom, but my mom definitely is not healthy, right? And I was working on forgiveness because I believe forgiveness is freedom.
Yeah.
Like ultimate freedom is absolute forgiveness to the best of your human being's ability, right? So I was thinking, how do I forgive her? Really, really, really forgive her. So I started writing the gifts I gotten from the bad things, right? What gift did I get from all this control, from being forced to take all these vitamins, to being micromanaged to the point of it being super unhealthy, being scrutinized for who I was as a person? What gifts were in those? Because I believe, like you, there's a higher power, but I believe that there's a reason and that you're here for a purpose. And what is that purpose? And how do you maximize that? And, you know, you're put here to be your best self. And in being your best self, you inspire others to be their best self. And everybody's best self looks very different. And the path to get there is also your path is very different from both of your brothers in the same house with the same parents.
Yeah. Well, literally born on the same day.
On the same day. So for me, it really helped me to sit down and go, what's the glass half full? And sometimes I couldn't find anything, but I would say, thank you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, because you know what? It gave me resilience.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me determination to go, fuck you. I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So there's the gift. I don't know what the gift is for taking 21 vitamins a day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm super healthy now, but who knows if that's really true?
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, it taught me for sure what I don't like and what it feels like to do something over and over again you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what that feels like. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mom.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that would help you, but with all these things you're talking about, the line that was pulled out of your article by the New York Post and repeated over and over again is horrible. But what can you be grateful for in it so that you can forgive it and let it go and let the gratitude part of it feed who you are becoming?
Yeah.
And make you more powerful. Because those nasty little shit ass things are really the fuel. They're the fuel.
Yeah, they are.
If you let them, they can either tear you down or they can take you off.
Yeah.
And it's how you address them. Not that you shouldn't have very real negative reactions. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should be a Pollyanna that goes, well, there's the glass half full and everything. No, that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah.
But what is true, I believe, is once you've gone through the pain of it, you can choose to continue to carry the pain. No, I'm not saying that you're doing that. I'm just, as a lesson, this is what I learned.
Yeah.
I can either choose to just continue to carry that pain as pain, or I can choose to say this pain informed this part of who I am, and for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
So I guess I was kind of doing what my therapist said, which was to look at our inadequacies and say, I love that also.
Yeah.
And to say, I went through all this stuff with my mom so that I am really good at reading people, man.
Yeah.
I can read a person from a mile away.
That's amazing.
And that's because I was always on high alert with who are you today? Like yesterday, you were somebody different. I don't know who you're going to be today, but let's figure it out so that I can make it to tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know? So
hypervigilance. Yeah.
I was very hypervigilant with her, with watching her and figuring out what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a gift in that. I can read a person and know what's going on like that.
Well, in my recovery, I am at the point where I get to write my resentments down soon. Ooh. So this is a good sort of pregame to that.
Oh yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, because I don't hold resentment against my mom anymore at all, really. Like, I think I'm very fortunate to have parents who are supportive, and I'm living at home right now. I'm single, celibate, and sober, living in my parents' house at the age of 29.
How's that?
It's great. I'm so happy. Like, I really am. Like, I think for the first time in a long time, I just feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I haven't felt that ever. Like, I feel like I've constantly been like, okay, what's the next thing? What do I do? You know, like, but when you were discussing sort of like, now I know what I don't like. I think that's so instrumental in terms of like honing intuition and understanding like the physical sensation of like a bad feeling or like understanding like what is a good impulse and what is a bad impulse and like what that feels like. And so I am experiencing that a lot where I'm like I'm starting to tune into my own intuition where it's like, it's as basic as like, you know, I wanted to start watching 90 Day Fiancé, but I don't want to anymore, you know, like turn it off. Like I don't have to finish the episode, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, this song isn't doing it for me next, you know? Like it can be so minute. And Julia Cameron talks about like filling the form. So doing that small act every single day. And like, I think thinking about everything in terms of baby steps, like tiny decisions facilitate large change.
That's right.
And
absolutely believe that.
Yeah. And so I'm so grounded in the moment of like being here and like even just like right now, just being here, like being able to like share any of this, like, is only predicated on the fact that, like, I'm not high or drunk, and I'm thinking about all this, and I'm able to communicate this to you. And of course, I trust you and love you, and I have compassion for you, and I respect your boundaries.
Well, same.
And
right back at you.
yeah, and that's just like sort of when the best things happen, is when you're like in rooms with people who are TCB, you know? And yeah, I'm already in gratitude for the book, and I think I need to make the shift of like, yeah, I wrote that book. Like it's so dumb because like in my head, like I was always like, the memoir is going to be the first thing, and it's going to be my literary debut, and it was just like so grandiose. And it's just like, no, I as I was driving in Alabama before the gas station panic attack, he had fallen asleep, and so like his like volatile feelings weren't like being projected into me. And you know, Alabama highway is just like straight road, and it's just trees. And portions of my life were coming back to me that like I haven't been able to access ever.
Wow.
Like sitting at carpool in the second grade waiting for my mom to pick me up, and like the smell of my grandfather's windbreaker and like things like that. And when that happens, I understand that I'm living what I need to eventually write about.
Right.
And so like I've been like, what's the end of my memoir? Like, what is that? You know, and I'm just like, I was like, oh fuck. I was like, I have to write about this, like shit. And like whether I do or not, like whatever. But I think I was, because, you know, it was like my third day sober, like I was able to hear that like little base intuition. And I'm just so thankful for that. And like I feel like I'm and my dad said like, you know, this makes sense because you're catapulted back into your brain, right? Like I'm no longer running from it.
Right.
And so like I feel this kinship to my childhood self that like before I only felt disdain, no compassion. I was like,
no TCB
whatsoever. I was like, how could she have let them take her to the nutritionist? Why didn't she do more? Like, you know, all that. And it's like now, like I'm able to identify the person I was before all that and understand, like, feel deep. I think I need to process more like the deep sadness of the sort of starvation and dissociation and numbness and depression and all of that, because that's something that I've like even though I've been in recovery for 10 years, like I avoid it. And this ties into what my food stuff. I'm working. So my personal trainer, she's like she's like, I don't think she's a nutritionist, but she is certified. Anyway, she's doing this nutritional program. Her name's Kristen Richards. And I am getting, for the first time in my life, actual nutritional information.
Oh, wow.
Like I went to a nutritionist from ages 12 to 18 who pitched it as a lifestyle, right? But told me exactly what to eat. And of course, it was like highly processed food, low fat, like calorie counting, all that shit. And like by the time I got to college, I didn't know how to feed myself because I knew nothing about food.
Actually.
And so like she's like given me information about like how to do portioning and like listening to your body and like just like like about different types of protein and like what you want to prioritize and like what you want to put on your plate based on your goals. And like, I mean, I can't verbally do it justice, but I can send you her information so that people can have access to her because she is a brilliant resource.
That's awesome.
But I feel so much gratitude to finally be in the place, one, to be able to absorb this information, and two, like, I feel sadness that we aren't being taught this in schools, or we're not.
Totally.
And it's like, it's
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's insane.
They should never have gotten rid of home ec.
Yeah.
Home ec. Yeah. I learned about nutrition in home ec.
Really?
I learned how to cook in home ec, learned how to sew. I learned how to balance my checkbook, all in home economics, because it's home economics, and they got rid of it. There's not one single home economics teacher in LA Unified School District. Not one. They cut all funding for it about 5 or 6 years ago. It's criminal. It's ridiculous. Finances should be taught in home economics.
Yeah.
Basic health and well-being and nutrition. Some basic mental health skills should be taught. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I think that sadness piece, I see it in you a lot. And I think I don't think it holds you back from anything, but it's definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had it too when I was young, and I worked with a Reiki guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he said to me, "You have more sadness than anybody I've ever met."
Wow.
And you come in here every day with a big smile, but that's not all that's going on. And that smile is not going to do for you what you need it to do until you let go of some of the sadness.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I do that? And he said, you just got to cry. Doesn't matter what you're crying about. You don't need to define it. He said, you need to wail. You need to lay on the ground and just holler and let it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how the hell do you do that? So coincidentally, I was in school for acting, and this particular acting school made us take a movement class. And the movement was specifically to access your emotional life.
Oh, damn.
And it freaking slammed me to the ground. And it's a lot of like rolling around on the floor and doing all these specific kind of weird movements. And for whatever reason, it opens your whole solar plexus, and whatever's happening just vomits out of your body.
Damn.
And then I'd go home to my apartment in New York and shut myself in the closet and just sob and sob. And, you know, when I was a kid, I never cried. I broke my ribs and didn't tell my mother.
Holy
I didn't
shit.
even cry when I was 8 and broke my ribs and went, nope, no one's seeing anything from me. You're not getting anything from me. So I had so much pent up, and I had zero comfort level with hearing myself in sorrow or in grief. I couldn't hear that sound of my voice. Made me so I think really scared. I think it made me feel really, really afraid for my own safety. And that's, I'm sure, from the way I was brought up. Not that my mom didn't want me to have sadness as a feeling. I just didn't feel safe to feel anything around her at all. Joy, happiness. I felt I couldn't show her any emotion at all. So I didn't. So I would lock myself in the closet with the light out. Like not like a walk-in closet, like a closet, like a little bitty New York City.
You're like pushing the clothes
box.
apart. Like...
I was, and I'd sit back there because I couldn't see, and I believed that no one could hear me. I have no idea if anybody could, but I believed I'm surrounded by clothes. Now I'm just going to let it all come out.
Yeah,
I did it for a long time. For like, not joking, for like, I lived in that apartment for 3 months. And I did it probably every day for that 3 months. It was a lot. And you know what? I'd just get in the closet once a day. And if it came up, I just wouldn't stop it. I just let it come out. Let it come out. It was I was so scared of it. And at the end of the day, it was maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
It's not like you lay around and sob for an hour.
Yeah.
It's like 2 or 3 minutes. And then after started doing it for a while, I was like, realistically, it's only a few minutes. And if this is what it takes for me to feel what that smile really means, totally worth it.
Yeah.
I don't know why him saying that to me the way he said it, because my goal always from my goal, I think I've told you this before, was to be happy. And why am I not happy? And I don't even know if he knew that was my word, my goal, that was my vision, was happy. But when he said, you can't feel that smile all the way till you get rid of some of the sadness, for whatever reason, I went, okay, this is keeping me from the happy. So then we got to get rid of it. I still have it. I didn't get rid of it.
Yeah.
I just got enough out that it got out of my way to do other things. And, I don't know.
No, everything you're saying is deeply resonating with me. I mean, I was watching West Side Story with my brother on Sunday, the new one.
I haven't seen it.
And sobbed.
You did?
But I felt myself I didn't really care about crying in front of him. But I felt myself stopping myself from losing my shit. And I realized, because when I first got sober, I was crying. It was on Christmas Eve, they went to Adam Carolla's Christmas party and I went to a meeting and they left without saying goodbye. And I literally ran outside sobbing, being like, you left without saying goodbye. Like all these like abandonment feelings, like childish, you know?
Yeah.
Nothing was right sized, you know?
Yeah.
Like New Year's Eve, I cried so hard I threw up in my mouth.
Oh
like,
my God.
Like
bless
it's just
your
like
heart.
yeah. But
it was an upheaval.
It was, oh my God. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But like, you know, Sunday kind of reminded me that it's been a while since I've been crying, and like sort of that like putting a smile on to cope, and like when your insides don't match your outsides. And I think that that's a lot, like I think people socialized as women are masters at that.
Totally. And some of it's actually healthy. It's good to fake it till you make it. Yeah, sometimes. But it can't be the only way you function.
It can't be a mask.
No, it can't. Exactly.
And
that's right.
I when you were speaking, I was thinking about like, when did I learn that it wasn't, not that it wasn't okay, but that crying wasn't effective. And I think for me, I had this memory of being in the front seat of my mom's car, like buckled in, sobbing because I didn't want to go to ballet, crying for the whole hour, and her having to pay the lesson anyway because we were technically there, and going home and her like storming to her side of the house being like, I don't care if you skate, like we could have a beach house anyways, like do what you want. And like my dad at that point was like touring college, all like doing love line shit, talking about sex to college students across the country, like gone constantly. And I remember sitting, like he was kind of always brought in when I was like way too unmanageable. And I just remember he like sat and he was like, do you want to quit skating? And like I could just like sense like how exhausted he was and how depleted he was, and that like that I was taking from him what little he had. And I understood that if I stopped skating, then I would have no reason for him to come home.
Oh my.
And
that's a lot for a little girl to have to figure out and hold. That's too much.
And so that's like when the childhood depression started, and I started kind of like just numbing out. And also like when my body became the problem, you know, when it was like, you know, it was before the nutritionist. So it was kind of like the push and pull of like, don't eat that, you know, but like there wasn't actual any like order to the disorder kind of thing. But that period of time and that little girl has been so inaccessible to me until now. And so
you couldn't heal her until now.
No. Yeah. And like as like complicated as my figure skating career was, like I'm so grateful to it in that like I was an incredible performer. I was an incredible figure skater. I was able to achieve something that like, I guess before getting sober, I couldn't remember that I loved it because it became an unyielding obligation when at first it was a passion. And yeah, I just, and just like all these different things were like resurfacing and getting sober of like, I too was assaulted, and I like just like sublimated that, you know, and I like didn't address that. And then I got sober and it was like, oh, I wasn't assaulted just once, I was assaulted twice. And it's like, how is it that like, I'm like, of course, like each assault coincided with a depressive episode or acting out or whatever. Right.
And so you blame yourself, and it's not your fault. I understand.
And so it's just, I appreciate you saying that you sort of, you see the sadness in me, because I think I'm very good at pretending and I know how to perform by virtue of my family and figure skating and all these different things. But it's always nice when people can see me.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I do see you. Yeah. I just drew a connection. So tell me if this is accurate.
Tell me.
Reflecting on ice skating, you can see the positive. In the moment, it was resentful. Reflecting on your book writing, it was positive. In the moment, it was resentful. Those are very parallel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What does that mean? Maybe it means nothing. But it just, when you said that, I went, this is exactly what she said about the book.
That's interesting.
Perhaps you're uncomfortable with the process.
That's so spot on. I hated practice, loved the performance.
Yeah.
Hated writing it, loved promoting it.
Yeah.
Like, and what's interesting about the Artist Way, and specifically the week that we're on in the Artist Way, it's all about the journey and not the product.
How funny.
And so I feel like I'm starting to transition into loving the process in addition to the product. And I don't know, I think I kind of because I've been working on a memoir for the past 6 years or whatever. And I'm so daunted by the project that I haven't even been able to touch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I guess that's interesting. I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night being like, oh, the parallels.
Sorry.
No, I'm thankful for it.
Sorry. This is what I do with Bert a lot, is remind him that his anticipation of a thing is always so much worse than the thing. So if yours is the process when you're going through it is like pulling teeth, but the end result is amazing. For him, when I say the anticipation of a thing is almost so much worse than the thing, you don't need to change that about how you process. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean that because Bert gets anxiety leading up to something, that's incorrect. But it gives him relief to know that this is his process.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you should change that process. I don't want you to think I'm saying what you've been doing is wrong. What I'm saying is, if you know your process, you can relax into your process.
Right.
And then find a way for it to be less stressful, less intense, less emotionally taxing, and just go, this is what I do when I do things that are meaningful.
Yeah.
And this is how I function through it.
Damn.
So if you know yourself well enough, because every time Bert starts getting in a tizzy, I go, remember, your anticipation of a thing is always worse than the thing. You're in anticipation. And he'll go, you're right. It just gives him a minute to like collect himself and move forward.
Self-knowledge is power.
It totally is. I think many people go through meaningful things exactly like what you just described. This was hard in the moment. When it was over, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So many people have that experience. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
But knowing that that's how you do it may give you some relief, may give you some permission to just be resentful in the moment and not judge that.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I have been told that to change my mind is like dragging someone with their heels dug into the mud.
Yeah.
Like, I don't go to change super gracefully sometimes. Yeah. And if I know that about myself and I start seeing myself digging my heels in, I go, this is how I do it. And that's okay. And how can I make it easier for me if this is how I'm going to do it?
Yeah.
That's not that I should change it, but how should I do it that makes this easier for me?
Yeah.
We're wired the way we're wired for a reason. It's to survive. It's to survive and to thrive, because that makes you thrive. You wrote a book.
Yeah.
You were extremely successful ice skater.
Yeah.
That got you to thrive. Nothing wrong with that process at all. This podcast is brought to you by because I have sponsors, which makes me so proud. Brought to you by Cuts. Cuts is a clothing line for men that kind of takes a t-shirt to a little bit of a different level. The fabric they use for these t-shirts is kind of heavier than normal t-shirt fabric, but it's not like scratchy or hard. It's a soft but heavier fabric. And I think it's really feels very comfortable and really, really nice. They don't have any logos. There's no like labels on the outside that you can see. It's just a classic look with some newer technology and fabric. Great colors that you can mix and match. They have Henleys. They have short sleeve crew necks. They have hoodies. They have a large selection of tailored, fitted men's t-shirt, casual-ish wear. But it's definitely not casual, because you could definitely wear the t-shirt with a nice jacket on top and dress it up, because the t-shirt is could be dressed up. Okay, so my favorite Cuts clothing item is their hoodie. I like their hoodies pockets, because their pockets are not, it's not like a big patch pocket on the front. They're kind of subtle. So the hoodie looks very streamlined and almost like dressy. So you could wear it really if you went to casual dinner. you could wear it and not look like you're wearing like your favorite football team's hoodie. You look like you're wearing a piece of fashion, and it's a hoodie, so it's extremely comfortable. And the fabric again is just really soft. That's my favorite item they have is their hoodie. I think it looks amazing. So make your next gift the best ever with Cuts Clothing. Get 15% off your first order by going to cutsclothing.com/wife. That's CUTS clothing.com/wife for 15% off the only shirt worth wearing.
I guess what I would wish for myself in the future in sort of either acknowledging my resentments or working through my resentments is potentially working through processes that I don't have to resent it. Like through like writing this newsletter, like progress, not perfect. Like I just feel like I'm hoping in the future that I don't put myself in situations in which I have to resent everyone and everything around me in order to get through it.
Totally. No, of course. Yeah.
But I also might just be resentful when it comes to doing work.
Well, it may be your defense mechanism to fear.
Yeah.
Or to insecurity.
Yeah.
It may be how you thwart those negative feelings. So if you find the base of why am I doing that, that may help you do it less. You know, Bert has an extreme fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So his anticipation, perfect example, Georgia has the same exact problem.
Yeah.
We were in Florida. She was probably about maybe 10 years old. And we are really good friends with this other couple. And the dad said, let's go parasailing. And I was like, let's do it. And Bert was like, I'm going to pass on this one. I'm probably too big. And Isla was like, let's do it. And I saw Georgia just go, and I said, you okay? And she was like, I don't know what parasailing is. And I saw her doing what her dad does. The anticipation of the thing is far worse than the thing.
Yeah.
So I talked to her about, this is what parasailing is. This is what's going to happen. You don't have to go. But if I don't go, I'll be the only one that doesn't go. Okay. Then you can deal with that anxiety, or you can deal with the anxiety of the unknown. Either way, you're going to have anxiety. I can't take that away from you. Yeah. You have to deal with it either by not going and being left out, or by going into the unknown. What do you choose? And she said, well, I choose to go into the unknown. And I said, I tell you what, once we get there, you suss it out. Isla and I'll go first. If you don't like it, don't go. That's easy. But then at least you've walked into the fire.
Yeah.
And said, you know what? I can walk on flames. I'm good. Or, you know what? I'm going to sit over here and watch it burn out. But you at least given yourself the opportunity to make the choice.
And I think that's the fundamental thing that I don't feel like I had in both those situations.
Is a choice? Well, then that's important for you to know.
But it was an illusion. I didn't have to take the book deal. I didn't have to figure skate. When my dad asked me if I wanted to quit, I could have said, yeah, I want to quit. Because I, at that point, wanted to quit. But at the end of the day, I guess maybe I'm learning, I don't know. I don't know if I can reflect on it without having the knowledge of like, that was, year 5 of my 13-year figure skating career. But like,
this is a good avenue you're going down.
Yeah.
Is you perceived yourself to not have a choice when actually you did. You could have said to your dad, I don't want to write that book with you. I see what you mean. So you're real or perceived, you felt that you had no choice.
I didn't feel like I had a voice.
Ah.
And I think that's probably what has been so powerful about talking about consent and becoming a writer. Like in the 4th grade that same year, my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Wilson, told my mom that I was never going to make it at my school, that my head was in the clouds, that I needed to listen to the news.
Your head was in the clouds. You were 9.
I was 9.
Oh, come on.
She was lecturing about Arctic tundra. Okay. I was like,
which is riveting.
I know, right? Prairies, tundra, or desert landscapes.
I'd much rather gossip with my girlfriend next door.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Like I'm doodling like Jack's name in hearts, like I was like, fuck this shit from day one.
Totally.
And that day, my mom, of course, being my mom, no boundaries whatsoever, was like, your teacher said this.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like notoriously mean, this teacher. Like she had like, there were rumors that she like threw a chair and threw a student, and like she would do it as a joke or whatever. But like, who knows? She was an old bitter woman who was like watching privileged kids pick their noses and like growing up to be senators who like did awful things or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
And, I was a bratty little girl. Like, I just was. And I was not self-aware. And clearly I was like deeply sad in some sense. And I understood that like I got validation through boys, or I got validation because I was pretty or whatever it was. And, that doesn't lead to that exciting of a child. But I mean, I was a nice kid, but I
think you're being a little hard on
Oh,
yourself.
well, this is what I mean. I have no compassion for my child.
Yeah,
itself.
I think you're being a little hard on yourself.
People called me Princess Paulina a lot. Yeah.
Like even today or
no,
then?
not anymore. But like as a child.
Why?
I was very flirtatious. I was very
What's wrong
bubbly.
with that?
I mean, I was in this like sort of like hyper academic bubble where like everybody's parents were at like JPL or NASA or Caltech professors or lawyers. And my dad was a doctor, but my mom was a bikini model in the 80s and like sometimes worked in a travel agency. And like I was an ice skater and people didn't really understand that. And
so you're just in the wrong place.
I was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And like I'm very thankful for my education, like insane education, but like my school for sure traumatized the shit out of me and a lot of my peers.
I completely validate what you're saying.
Yeah. And like I have a memory of in the 3rd grade, like sitting next to this kid who was on the 12s times tables and I was stuck on the 3s tables.
Oh, how dare you.
I know. And I was just like, I'm stupid. Like I inherently believed I was stupid.
Yeah.
And
that's not good.
I know. And I carried that belief until I was like 20, 21, 22.
Because you were behind on your 12 times tables.
Yeah. Because I wasn't good at math. But I had a dream about it last night. Oh my God.
That you're not good at math?
I had a dream that I had to do high school math again.
Oh my God.
I was in a high school. I did AB Calc too, which I did well.
So you're totally good at math.
I'm totally fine. It's just the narratives that I told myself growing up.
It's not the narrative you told yourself. It's the narrative the culture you were in told you.
Yeah, and literally my teacher.
That's what I mean. The culture meaning your school's culture.
Yeah.
And it's really the culture of education these days in general. Because if you are not if you are not an A student, you're a failure.
Yeah.
These days, public or private.
Yeah.
It's very rare that a public... actually, I take that back. I think the school that my daughters are in, for certain students, you should be making A's. But for my kid, who they understand has learning distinctions and is really good at art, they're like, let's just get her to pass.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bring it fucking on, man. I've been waiting on you to say that since kindergarten. We just need her to pass. I just need her out of high school.
Yeah.
She's going to be totally fine. If you just get her, if you could give her every test orally instead of written, she'd be a straight A student. Man, you give her a test and it's she's dead in the water. Oh, and they don't.
I wish that had been the understanding that my school had when I was in high school.
Oh, most schools are like yours.
Oh, well, mine especially. It's like pre-college prep, like super expensive tuition, like 92 kids in my graduating class, like insanity. My dad went there as well.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So no pressure there.
No pressure. My dad also was the lead of the musical and captain of the football team and ASB president. So
no pressure there either.
No pressure.
Geez, so he's always been a high achiever. Oh my God.
But of course, he too had that sort of self-concept and insecurity and whatever. And through writing this book with him, realized that he kind of stepped into those leadership roles only in his senior year. But like as a kid, they have like a plaque in the middle school of all the ASB presidents. And like I'd walk by my dad's name all the time. And like I ended up being on one of those plaques as like the co-president of the Girls Service League, which is, kind of the sorority of the school, but it's like fundraising and whatever.
Yeah.
And so, when I got to high school, I was like, I'm going to Columbia. I'm going to be on the ice skating team because that's what my mom wanted for me. And I couldn't break a B+ average. Meanwhile, I'm, eating 1,200 calories a day, 6 Diet Cokes a day, ice skating before school, dance during school, cheer after school,
crazy.
Like doing 4 hours of exercise on 1,200 calories, like 3 APs, just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And like no opinions. No opinions whatsoever.
What do you mean? What do you say?
Like
you were not allowed to have opinions?
I didn't feel that I had the authority to have opinions. Like I didn't have opinions on anything. I didn't.
But now where do you think that came from? Do you think it came from parenting?
I wouldn't say that my mom is the most like politically minded, or she's opinionated, but not necessarily about things that like would be like I guess my family views themselves as moderate.
Okay.
And with that comes a sort of sense of like like I said, I would think that in their older age they become more opinionated, but I wouldn't say like I would say my dad was invested in being neutral. And I think I ingested that, and that I didn't see anybody around me really having strong opinions. And if I did, I was like, well, why are you making noise? Kind of like, I think I was invested in silence.
Okay. And neutrality, maybe, which was what you were presented with.
Well, because I didn't want to be extreme in any way. I wanted to be thin. I wanted to be pretty. That's it. I didn't think I was extreme. Smart. I thought as all I could be.
Oh, man.
Isn't that intense?
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
It's like, and it's so like.
What's crazy about that is that's the way I was raised, my generation.
Yeah.
So you keep thinking as you young kids come up, that goes away because I was told I would never be able to do anything. I was too fat. And I weighed like 105 pounds. You know, I'm like, fat where?
Yeah.
I look back at the pictures and go, my mom actually said you should start starving yourself.
Oh my God.
Because you're really kind of heavy. Yeah. And I look at the pictures and I go, boy, what would she say about me now? I'm like pushing maximum density here.
Yeah.
And I'm very healthy. I'm not fat.
Yeah.
I'm just a healthy weight. So I would think as we age, as generations, because your parents are a little bit older than me. So you're a little bit older than my kids, that would have gone away.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not implying that it's from your parenting.
No.
But from that
you would hope that progress
of adults
would have happened, right? Like,
yes, that would have progressed out of our society.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it definitely
didn't.
No. And it wasn't until I went to college and like discovered feminism and started eating disorder recovery and all those things that I was able to like dispute those ideas. Like finally have opinions, use my voice, like discover my intellect, like understand, like getting into Barner, like I had to be smart to get in Barner, you know? And I honestly, like, not that I wish, you know, I wish that I had more self-esteem as a child, but it was almost an advantage to go into college not thinking I was the smartest person in the room because, you know, Columbia, like all these people are the big fish in their tiny ponds. And they go to Columbia and they have this huge self-concept and then suddenly they're a small fish for the first time in their entire lives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they freak the fuck out.
I bet.
And so like I was freaking out for my own fucking reasons. Of course, I was like, I'm throwing up a lot. Like maybe that's not good, you know?
Yeah.
But at least I was able to like discover myself in a way that wasn't self-grandiose.
Right.
Like I didn't have to get knocked down a few pegs. I need to be
brought
up. Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. You know, as you're talking, I was thinking my two girls are at an all-girls school. And one of the things they say happens in an all-girls school is that confidence you're talking about, that knowing your own mind and being able to express it happens for some girls when they are in all-girl environment.
That's what happened to me.
Because there's no boys.
Yep.
And some girls naturally defer to boys.
Yep.
And some girls are embarrassed to say what they think in front of boys. And some girls just want to show off for boys and be like whatever they are that's not authentic to themselves.
Yep.
And my girls chose to be in an all-girls school. We didn't care.
That's amazing.
But I think that's happened. I think I've watched, especially Georgia, really become very strong as a woman.
I love that.
And I'm so happy for that. Isla's first year there was in the pandemic. So she lost a year.
Yeah.
She's just getting to the place this year where I can start to see her blossoming. Isla really is not afraid of boys. She's not boy crazy, not romantic like that, but she's always had a lot of boy friends. And Georgia never did.
Yeah.
Georgia she had a couple, but they were all very non-macho.
Yeah.
They were very one's gay and the other one is just like, we call him the mayor. He knows everybody.
Yeah.
He makes friends with everybody. He's the least threatening man. You know, some men are just freaking macho.
Yeah.
And something about that is awesome also.
Yeah.
But it does create a dynamic. And sometimes that dynamic is not helpful for the non-macho male or female in the room.
Oh, yeah.
So unless I've always been kind of an alpha. So I can hang with every alpha dog, every alpha man.
Yeah.
I don't really have much of a problem.
Yeah.
But not everybody's like that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, not just women, a lot of people don't do well with alphas. And a lot of guys are alpha.
Big time.
You know?
My school prioritized the alphas.
Did they glorify?
Oh, did they?
Did they reward?
Yeah. I mean, also, like, my brothers were football players and I was a cheerleader, and it's just like I think there's a sort of a classical gender expression in my family, and that, like, my dad is the primary breadwinner and my mom does everything to facilitate my dad. And, you know, my brothers, like, you know, starting in 3rd grade, we were fed differently, you know, like, I think.
Why were you fed differently?
Because they were trying to make me lose weight. So, like, they were fed normal things and I was like, they were given more while I was given less. Right. And I think
that's interesting.
I think how we feed ourselves can be very gendered. But also, like, when I was a little girl, like, I knew how to be around boys because I was a triplet and I had my 2 brothers. And but then as I got older, like, it was very much like performing or like flirting or whatever. And then in high school I had like a very serious boyfriend. It was a very codependent relationship, and, like, you know, I didn't really, like, I stopped seeing my friends kind of thing. And when we broke up my senior year, like, I was able to sort of flourish a little bit. And, like, I was always high achieving, like, leader of the musical, cheerleader, GSL president, like, getting good grades, whatever the fuck metric I was trying to measure myself by. But it wasn't until I got to college and was in a female only queer space that I was able to, like, breathe. Like, it was just like, because prior to that, it was like, oh, boys are smarter than girls. And, like, that was just like an inherent belief I had. I know, it's so ridiculous. And it's just like, intelligence is a spectrum, right? Like, there's so many different ways to be intelligent. And that's what I loved about Barnard is that, like, every woman, gender nonconforming person that I met was so distinct in who they were, and that, like, no 2 people were the same.
Right.
And it wasn't just about, like, your GPA. It was like, you know, one person was a playwright and the other person was, like, raised Wiccan and does science, and, like, you know, just, like, all these, like, interesting I saw different forms of intelligence. And I think I was raised in a very, like, rigid, standardized form of intelligence.
It sounds like it. It sounds like the high achieving school was not very diverse.
No. Not in intelligence, not in student body, not in ideas.
So let me ask you this. So then I don't know where Susan or Drew grew up. Where did they grow up?
Dad in Pasadena, mom in Newport.
Oh, so you got no diversity.
Yeah.
There ain't no diversity nowhere and no how. Well, that's the hard part, isn't it? Is because if you're given one option, you don't understand as a child that there are other options.
Oh yeah.
That is hard.
I went from Poly. Am I allowed to say my school? I don't care. Poly. I went to Polytechnic High School in Pasadena, K through 12. 2 of my siblings were my classmates. 92 kids in my graduating class. We started with 30 in kindergarten. So some of these kids I literally knew from the age of 5. Like, I can tell you their favorite color, their birthday, their parents' names, like, what have you. Maybe an embarrassing story. What they're good at, what they're bad at, you know?
You really know each other.
Yeah.
It's like being in a small town.
Oh, for sure.
And, you know, a lot of the kids I grew up with are still in the small town.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't stay in my small town. My parents divorced. My mom moved me to Atlanta. I went to 6 different schools, K through 12.
Wow.
And so I came out of that with a very broad view of race, religion, sex, age, national origin.
Could not, like, I was so sheltered.
That's interesting. That's really, really interesting because I think your parents, not just your parents, parents who put their kids in that best place, are doing what they think is best.
My education is insane.
Totally.
And that was my dad's priority.
Totally.
Education from day one.
Totally. But there's so much more to education than that. And I think that is the piece that education itself is missing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
My kids went to an elementary school here that was 48% free lunch.
Wow.
And when you have 48% free lunch, you have a lot of people who are living at or below the poverty line. You have a lot of blue collar workers that are there, tons of different ethnicities, multi-generational households, people living in apartments, people living in mansions, because we are also in LA.
Yeah.
And it was a very good elementary school, educationally, really great for a public school. But one of the reasons I wanted them there was because it was 48% free lunch.
Yeah.
Because then you get to say, we may live in a small, at the time, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. There are lots of people here just like us, and we have so much more than so many people, even in our 2-bedroom, 1-bath house.
Yeah.
And,
see, I didn't have that perspective. I was like, oh, we don't have a rock climbing wall, a movie theater, tennis court. We just have a pool and a trampoline
and a really nice house. By the way,
beautiful house. I mean, that's the other thing is like, growing up, I never appreciated that house.
Oh,
never.
Such a great house.
And being back after being in New York for 10 years, where I like really was not in nature at all, I am just like, I am in awe.
Yeah.
Like, I am in awe. I am like kissing the ground. I am like, I'm in such gratitude. And like, I think my best friend from college, who I've known since I was 13 when she came to the school, you know, she's Chicana, and she, I don't know if I mean, I wouldn't comment on, you know, how she funded poly, but essentially like her experience of poly was so different than mine.
Sure.
And when we became good friends in college, she was able to share with me like the ways in which she felt fetishized, the ways in which she felt targeted, the ways in which like the disparity she was able to see that I couldn't.
Yeah. Because why should you be able to?
Well, right. Because of my own privilege, because of like, it just like, I didn't have the self-awareness. I didn't have.
It's just maturity.
The maturity.
It's maturity. You're not supposed to be mature at 8.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be 8.
Yeah.
You're supposed to not see any of these problems.
Yeah.
You know, you can't see problems until you get out of your comfort zone. You know, when you live in this one bubble, how in the world could you possibly relate to someone else that's not in that bubble? You have to kind of step out of it in some capacity. You could, you know, a job like your dad, who's a doctor, he sees people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
Then he gets to experience something outside of his bubble.
Yeah.
But still live in the same bubble. He lives his, you know, life in a bubble.
Yeah.
So to speak, but walks into another world. And I don't think enough people do that in life. And they don't walk into another world and go, well, let me see if I can relate or understand or have compassion, or, you know, we're sometimes so thoughtless in the way we move through life because being white by itself is such a privilege. Just being white.
Well, just even the fact that like societal default is white, right? Like it's like white is the standard, and then black, brown, whatever is the variance.
Yes.
And it's like, nah, that sounds like colonialism's doing,
right.
you know? And it's, I mean, I was not able to understand that, perceive that, whatever, until I was taken out of my context, moved across the country, and finally I was the minority in the room. And I was like,
totally.
oh, fuck. I was like, oh, poly did have a diversity problem, you know? And
Polly's not alone.
No, not at all.
Not at all. No, not at all.
And I mean, it's, I mean, I guess to tie it all back, it's like, that's why I was only able to perceive that I could only be thin and pretty, right? Because in the world that I was existing in, there were ways women should be. There was ways that I should exist or take up space or whatever it was. And like, at that point I was just like fully in my eating disorder. Like in high school, during lunch, I would always go like, you know, when you stare and it feels really good and you don't want to blink. And my friends would be like, you say that every single day. And I was like, I'm just dissociating at the table, you know, starving. And it's just like, you know, something that my friends make fun of me about, because they're, you know, 16, 17, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I was existing in the way that like white supremacy allows, which is like a very like marginalized, narrow scope of existence. And like, in some way I was like achieving the like white woman ideal, right? Like I was like, you know, very thin. I was a very small clothing size. I was on the surface high achieving. I was pretty. Like people had crushes on me, whatever. But on the inside, I was like, I just remember my high school boyfriend being like, where do you want to eat? And just like dissociating in the car and like bending over, being like, I can't identify what I actually want to eat because if I did, I wouldn't adhere to my diet. Right. And then I would gain weight and then I would go to the nutritionist and then she would be mad because I gained weight, you know, and so I'm thankful for my education, both like K through 12, because like I am the writer I am today because of fundamentals that I learned there.
Sure.
But also like going to New York, going to Barnard, graduate school at Columbia, all rarefied experiences. But being taken out of my primary context was so illuminating.
Yeah, yeah.
And so necessary. It had to.
You had to be like, oh.
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Oh my God. Level. I was so ready to go.
Yeah, totally.
I was so ready to go. And that's when the drinking started for me.
Well, you know, Bert and I had this conversation the other day. It's an interesting question. You know, you can't just say to your high schooler, sure, you can drink. It's illegal.
Yeah.
It's against the law.
Yeah.
You can't drink till you're 21.
Yeah.
Reality is they drink.
Yeah.
I drank. Bert drank. Everybody drinks in high school. Bert asked the question the other day. He said, is it a disservice to not allow drinking? Because then when they get to college, they go crazy.
Yeah.
Which is, well, I drank all through high school and went crazy in college because it was so much more socially acceptable in college.
Yeah.
And the experience I had drinking in high school was more limited. But interesting question. You know, we have people in our life who let their kids drink in their house because they feel like it's a controlled environment. And if they, instead of them sneaking around and trying to drive, at least it's a controlled environment. Bert and I have never been okay with that.
Yeah.
Because it's illegal.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're not supposed to be drinking at all.
Yeah.
But he did pose that question the other day. Is that actually wrong thinking? Because once you left, you were like, double down, baby, double down.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think?
It's a complicated thing. Like, especially since like now that I'm sober, I'm just like, I couldn't have alcohol in my house. Like, I mean, my parents have alcohol in the house and I'm not like tempted by it or anything. And I've been very lucky in that like, I'll get mouth cravings for alcohol, but I don't have like an unending desire for it. But it's interesting because like the way I was raised was like very much monastic, very like.
What does that mean?
I just like sort of like, do not touch, do not think, do not do, you know, like, I don't necessarily think it's wise to like do it in the house, you know, because it's just like, then you're facilitating something, one, that's illegal, and two, like you're condoning behavior that shouldn't be condoned.
I agree.
But I think it's sort of the same thing as like talking to your kids about sex. It's like having the door open and having a non-judgmental space of like, I'm not going to punish you. Like,
yeah, we do that.
Right. Like, you know, if you're going to go to Maggie's house and have a couple drinks, I'd rather you call me so I can pick you up and drive you home.
Yes. And we do that.
Yeah. And that I think feels like sort of the healthiest model of like not being delusional about the fact that it doesn't happen, but also not facilitating it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I mean, the concept of like the cool mom and like, there was this girl in my high school whose dad was in the LAPD and they would have parties at his house. And I just remember I got invited one time to like one of the high school parties I got invited to. It did not drink. And I remember his gun holster was on one of the living room chairs.
Well, that's a little scary.
I know. And I was just like, and you know, I'm sure there was no gun in it, but in my head there was a loaded gun.
Yeah,
and I feel like the reason I remembered it or it struck me was like, this entire enterprise is a loaded gun. The fact that we're all drinking in this house. And that like an LAPD officer's house. Yeah. So that we are protected, right? Like no one's going to come and bust us. But also at the same time, it's like.
He's condoning that you're breaking the law.
And so what message are you saying?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. It's so complicated. But I think just having an open door and sort of facilitating non-judgmental conversation, but not facilitating the indiscretion.
Right.
I mean, that's at least what I would. I mean, I don't have children, but
if you had to guess,
if I had to guess,
that'd be
but I
guess.
mean, it also. I think it's also important to highlight that, like, when you are under the influence of substances, you cannot consent.
Right, right.
And so I think having that conversation with your kids of like, if you are drinking tonight, you cannot have sex. You cannot hook up with somebody because you're not actually consenting.
Right.
And like when we first wrote the book, I was like, that's my dad's stance. Like it's his book, whatever. But like after getting sober and being like, oh, well, I was high when I got raped that time and I was drunk when I got raped that time. It was just like, I didn't consent to that, but I also was in a non-consenting situation.
Yeah, totally.
And so often, especially in college, is I would use alcohol to initiate sex or be okay with sex or whatever it was.
Right. Be comfortable in your own body or whatever.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I shouldn't have had any of that sex. And I wouldn't say that any of that sex was good. I like to say that they tripped and fell and landed inside of me. Like that's...
Because they were as drunk as you were.
Oh, constantly.
That's funny.
This is like one that kind of haunts me. This guy who was a senior when I was a sophomore, like sort of took interest in me. And one night he came over super drunk and there was lotion next to my bed and he pumped the lotion and then stuck it up my vagina.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then he like kind of ghosted me. And that was like sort of my first time having sex with someone where halfway through it, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so it was like my first kind of round of non-consensual sex, but I didn't communicate it. So and I wouldn't, and of course, like the week after it happened, his face was on all these domestic violence posters around campus.
Oh my God.
Because he was like an RA and like, was woke or whatever. And I was just like, I had the worst like hookup experiences with him ever.
Wow.
And it was sort of this illuminating moment of like the face, the smile without substance, right? Like what does the facade say that the actions are contrary to?
Right, right.
And so that's been one that I've been sort of chewing on of just like this popular, campus guy who like treats me like shit, puts lotion in my vagina.
Disgusting.
Yeah, it was just like, it was not.
For the record, no woman wants that.
No woman wants
that.
No
woman wants lotion in their vagina.
That's how you know someone is like trying to use a vagina like a penis.
Right. They don't know what they're doing.
No idea what they're doing.
No idea what they're doing.
And so, you could be with the person who's sort of fetishized in this weird way, but also like the reality is always a little bit more disappointing than the imagined image of them.
Right, totally.
And like at Columbia, I like to say that like there was like sort of the people who were on the Columbia pedestal and that like they were like big names on campus. And after I was on The View, I felt myself getting put on that pedestal and I hated it because I was like, anybody wants to talk to me about is eating disorders and like my eating disorder and how proud they are and how brave I was. And it was just like, I went into like a severe depression very quickly after that and like isolated and like, my senior year, like I was blackout drunk at Bacchanal, which is like the school music festival. And I was pretending to do parkour on a fountain and I broke my foot. And then a week later, I had been crutching on campus and an administrator stopped me and was like, you look so miserable. Like, do you want to use my knee roller? Like, those like scooters that are knee propped up. So a week later, I was rolling into a lecture hall late and it was an American film drama class and it was arena style seating. And I couldn't see at the floor, so I hopped up on one foot to get a little bit higher. And at the end of class, I hopped down, slipped, broke my other foot.
Oh my God.
This is 6 weeks before graduation.
Oh Lord.
So it's like I went from being on The View, interviewed about my eating disorder to with 2 broken feet, trying to finish my undergraduate thesis, no friends, depressed, like my mom coming in. Like it was so, and I think that goes back to like, I was smiling.
Yeah.
But like, what was I feeling? What was I hiding? What was I,
Well, when you start injuring yourself like that, it's usually an indication that something is amiss inside.
Yeah.
I think when you start, 2 in that short period of time would give me pause where I go, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's happening here? That you're out of present time. You're not in present. You're not present here. You're out. You got one foot in the past, one in the
present.
future.
You're pissing on the future.
Pissing on the present.
One foot in the present, one foot in the past.
No, one in the future.
Oh, God.
One in the past, pissing on the present. So in the present, what are you going to do now that you're home? What are your plans?
I'm doing a lot of recovery work, a lot of meetings. I started this newsletter, so I'm going to be writing that. I'm still doing freelance writing coaching. I'm now on week 9 of this cycle of the Artist Way.
How many weeks? 12?
12.
Yeah.
So we're in the sort of the final chapter, and that's going to be sort of a beautiful, like, thank God I had the foresight to like plan that, because it's been interesting to do a Artist Way. Can't say the other thing. Artist Way alongside recovery, because it supplements each other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also, it's my 4th time going through the Artist Way, but it's my first time doing it sober, which is the way you're supposed to do it.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
And it's been transformative.
I bet it's been a totally different experience, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
You know why? The other ones were not authentic.
It's interesting when in recovery rooms, people talk a lot about like coming to the program and then going out and doing more research, and coming to the program and going like sort of like relapse. Right. And I feel like I sort of had artistic relapses in that I was coming to Artist's Way and like sort of doing it haphazardly and taking what I needed from it at the time and then going out again. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is just like my creative recovery is coinciding with like my addiction alcoholic recovery. And I don't sort of I see the process as what it is, and that it was necessary to get to this point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But I also like now I'm like doing Artist Way sober is not optional. Like it's like you have to like in order to really get the effects, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be doing another session in June through August.
Awesome. We have to come back. I'll do another scholarship.
Yes,
that's great.
That'd be amazing.
June through August.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we're going to do a summer session, and hopefully I'm going to be doing more writing and reading and watching movies and reading. I was trying to say listen, but I said reading because I like to read. Listening to music and being outside, and I don't know.
It sounds to me like you are incubating.
Yes. I feel like I'm doing prep work to actually do the memoir.
Right. You're incubating.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Aren't you lucky that you can?
Oh my God. I feel endless gratitude for my parents. Like being in recovery rooms, like I hear all these stories and I'm just like, not everyone has their parents or anything at all.
Amen. That is the truth. Not everybody has the support you have, and you are really lucky. Yeah, you are
in so many ways. And I think something I've been thinking a lot about is like what made my bottom, and like
because in the grand scheme of bottoms,
not that bad.
Hey, it doesn't matter. There's no
it's true
judgment,
though.
But in the grand scheme, you're like amazing. I'll take that bottom all day long.
Yeah,
right.
Like I didn't lose my teeth. I didn't lose my job. I didn't lose my car. I didn't lose my house. Like
your dignity,
my dignity. Sure, I'm out of a relationship, but I think that needed to happen anyways. Like
sounded like it. Yeah, if you were talking about death from the beginning. That's probably not great. Yeah,
if I had listened, I think. I mean, it happened how it happened.
It doesn't matter because it got you here.
Yeah, exactly. But I think your bottom is just when you stop digging.
Interesting. Okay.
And I was tired of digging. Like I think doing this book and like having conversations like this and having met you and all these different things, I think I was waking up to the fact of I am capable of so much more.
You are capable of a lot.
And so what would I be able to accomplish if I wasn't chopping off both my hands and feet and then walking on stubs and trying to write with stubs, like, and so you're right. I'm definitely incubating. I'm absorbing. I'm learning. I'm digesting. I'm present. I'm healing. Like I feel healthy for the first time ever.
That's amazing. That's huge. Really. For the all that you've been through with this nutrition for your eating disorder started so young. For you to say you feel healthy, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
And of course, my like childhood nanny / my parents' housekeeper, she's been with my parents since before I was born, and she's an 80-year-old Polish woman. And she I adore her, but of course I came down today and she's like, I tell you something. You be perfect if you lose more weight.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And I was just like, I gotta go, Teresa. And she's like, no, don't be mad. And I was like, I'm not. And I wasn't mad. I was just like, it was kind of like it was a funny moment of like, of course I'm going to Leanne's house and she's telling me I need to lose weight. And it's just like, if this had happened 10 years ago, I'd be spiraling. Right. And now it's like, I mean, not smoking weed every day. I dropped the equivalent of 2 of my cats, you know,
Oh
like
my
without even
gosh.
trying.
Right.
Right. And like, I think when you are eating in a way that sustains you, feeds you, nourishes you, your body recalibrates.
It does, yeah.
And when I will release what I need to release, and whatever size I am, I'll be fine with it. You know, like,
Yeah.
the body is a fluctuating fluid entity. It is literally 80% water. Like, no size, no outfit, no whatever is going to define my content of character and
absolutely
my
not,
actions. And so it was kind of just like a nice reminder of just like kind of learning how to sort of let things roll over you and not allowing them to stick. And it just felt like kind of a sobering moment in that, like, it didn't upend my world, you know?
Right.
Like,
That's wonderful.
I'm able to live in this house that was like a den of destruction for so long. And like, my brother and I switched rooms. Very helpful.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
like
kind of a fresh start, sort of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel a lot of gratitude.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you know, life's a journey. The journey never ends.
Yeah.
And if you're always progressing, then you're doing the right thing. You know, it doesn't matter how much or how, you know, how intense your progression is. And incubating is progression also, as learning to be still and let, you know, to surrender and let happen. What's supposed to be happening, what's coming next is such a great place to be curious from and to say, what's coming next? I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see because it's going to be great. It's going to be transformative for you and for other people. Really. If you allow it, and I think you will.
Yeah.
Then it will be transformative for you and for other people because you have a gift to communicate with other people in ways that is unique to you, you know? And this book, your voice in this book is so clear and positive.
Yeah.
And non-judgmental, you know, where anybody who read it doesn't have to be awkward. I can't imagine anybody coming away from that book not feeling inspired. And maybe inspired, maybe some people would not be inspired per se, but at least say, I have good tools.
Yeah.
I have good tools that I can draw from. And that's a huge gift. And whatever you do next, maybe it's not the memoir.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something much simpler. You know what was coming to my brain?
Tell me.
You ever heard of a mini book?
Like a novella?
No.
What's a mini book?
Instagram has mini books. Have you seen these mini books?
No.
Let me see if I can find one. I had a friend who was doing mini books for a while, and they're probably similar to your newsletter, but formatted a little differently.
Oh, you got to tell me about this. You got to show me, send me.
I will send you one. I can't think right off the top of the head of one. One guy releases one like every day.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a lot. But
he must get money for it.
I don't know. But I don't know.
I'm like, monetize.
I know, right? Well, I mean, you always have to think about how you're going to make a living.
Yeah.
You know, you don't, I know you don't want to be in your parents' house your whole life.
No.
So now's good. Yeah. No problem with it now, but you'll
eventually
incubate and figure that out too when the time is right. And that, you know what, speaking from a parent who could totally support their child. If I had a child in your position, I wouldn't think twice about you living with me.
Yeah.
And supporting anything you needed. I've said that a million times. One of our daughters wants to be a zookeeper.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, I'm behind you 100%. And you know what? God. You can't possibly live a comfortable life as a zookeeper in Los Angeles. Maybe you could somewhere else, but I would have no problem supporting that if that's really, really what she wanted to do and was passionate about it. I'll pay half your rent. I'll take care of your car payment. I'll do that. That's fine. We have the means to be able to do it.
Yeah.
If it were detrimental to us, then that would be a different conversation. But I'm sure your parents feel the same way. Whatever you need to get you to wherever you're going.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very fortunate in that my parents, I pretty much, they pay for my health insurance premium, but otherwise I've been on my own pretty much.
Great.
And, you know, not everyone has that privilege, you know, and I have a lot of people in my life who aren't able or don't have parents who are able to supply that. And I think there's difference between like being a parent and wanting to supply that and not being able to, and parents who are able to supply that and don't because of principles or work, you know, whatever it is. And so I just want to say it's a beautiful thing that you're saying that, because as someone who has parents that are, you know, in the same vein, like it only helps facilitate growth for the most part.
Right.
There are people that it stunts for sure.
Yeah, totally.
But I think being discerning to recognize when you need to pull the plug, you know, like, stop the tub.
You got time.
Yeah. No, I'm like literally just getting my feet under me again. I'm just like, I came home in crisis, like full blown crisis, but it's amazing like how much growth I've made just in these 76 days alone.
It's because that growth is cumulative. It started when you were 19.
Yeah.
This growth didn't start in December.
No.
It started when you were 19.
Thank God. Like, thank God I vomited 8 times in one day and was like, this might be pathological.
Right? I know some people who could maybe help me with that. Let me give my dad a call, my mom a call. And get some help. It's really brave that you did that too.
But I think everyone has the capacity to do that, right? And it's whether or not you want to be honest with yourself. Because like, although I was able to like pretend it wasn't a thing for a long time, like when it, in the same way that like substance abuse is progressive, like mental illness can be progressive.
Absolutely.
And so when you get to that breaking point, like you have to kind of, I mean, everybody's bottom is different, you know, and everybody's journey is different, but there is nothing more powerful than asking for help. There's nothing braver than asking for help.
You know what? Here's what I think. God knows what you need, but I don't know that God knows if you're ready for it necessarily until you ask.
Yeah.
You have to ask. You have to say, I'm open to receiving, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I am open to receiving the opportunity to write my memoir. I'm open to receiving love in my life that's real and authentic and lasts forever. I'm open. I'm ready. Give it to me. Give it to me.
See, that's exactly where I am now, where I'm not dictating the timeline, right? Like I'm letting it unfold as it should. Like when I was watching West Side Story, I was like, man, I'm ready to fall in love again in like a year. Like I need some time, but I'm like, I'm open to the possibility of, you know, I wouldn't necessarily like Romeo Juliet, that whole narrative that is like mistaking intensity for love, right?
Totally,
like, you know, brother murdered, fiance murdered, whatever. Like I don't need that.
No,
like I don't need the chaos.
No.
But like the idea of like finding someone that I'm compatible with, who I work well with, that we uplift each other rather than drag each other down. Like now I know like what my red flag is. Like if I get engaged again and I'm only thinking about death, maybe it's a sign, you know?
You shouldn't say yes.
Yeah, right. I shouldn't have even said yes. Yeah. And I think like the power of divine timing, like, and especially with writing, right? Like my friend Orla Tinsley, she's an amazing Irish writer. She had a lung transplant.
Oh, wow.
And she's fantastic. And she was asking me this morning on Instagram about like, when do you know you're ready to write about something? And I said something along the lines of like, when I've allowed it to ferment to the point that it like, it feels like I can think about it in terms of form rather than content. So like, you know, when I wrote the narratively piece about doing speed and having threesome in Berlin, like that just like came out of me in one piece. And that I think was sort of a moment in which I surrendered to the creative impulse, but also like I understood that that experience allowed me to tell the story of like the pressure of my dad.
Right.
And with the memoir, I feel like for years it's just like, I got this memoir, I'm gonna do it, you know, whatever. But like now I'm understanding that like I am finally being granted the perspective that I didn't have for a long time. Like in graduate school, I'd write all these things and people would be like, you don't have perspective. And it was infuriating to me. But also I was 23, 24. Like who has perspective at 23, 24?
Nobody. Yeah. For the record, nobody.
But now I have all these like portions of writing that are like, of like, you know, dictations of events that I can now go back to and add my perspective on.
Right.
And so I've been chronicling my life in this way that will serve the larger project, but it's not on my timeline.
Right.
And I think it's been deeply humbling to be in service to that project because I really think my purpose is to write. And I think, you know, I've been granted a very, very beautiful education, rigorous education, and it has facilitated the ability to communicate ideas both in words and on the page and verbally. And for whatever fucking reason, I was born into this crazy ass family. And I think people don't have, like, there's this sort of like perception of fame that it's like all you ever want. It fixes all your problems or whatever.
It's incorrect.
It's so incorrect.
Yeah.
And I think I want to allow people access to the actual sensation of it and the sensationalism of it and the exposure and the kind of the insanity of it, and that it's not actually something you should aspire to. And it brings money and attention, all these things, but it doesn't fill the holes that exist within you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the intention should never be fame. The intention should be the work. Should be the work.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Bert doing anything other than telling jokes on stage.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him like selling boats. You know, he is that guy.
Yeah.
So he did that for a living for years before he got famous.
Yeah.
The fame is a late coming product of this long career of creativity.
Yep.
And I think that's what it should be about. And he actually never, I don't know if never's a strong word. Fame was not his goal.
Yeah.
His goal was to sell a certain number of tickets.
Yeah.
And what comes with that happens to be fame.
Yeah.
But he just wanted that many people in the seats to watch him tell a joke. And so, but I think people outside of that arena see it the opposite. All he wants is to be famous. Well, now you're famous. You must love being famous. It's actually kind of really difficult. In a lot of ways, especially people like me and Bert, who've been we've been together for 20 years, and only the last 3 of them has he been recognizable.
Wow.
So we've had 17 years, 2 kids. You know, our kids were like 12 and 14 before Dad had any notoriety. So we had complete privacy. And then to all of a sudden have very little privacy, and for me and Bert, it's a different journey than for George and Isla. They had no say. And not that I necessarily had a say in it, but I'm mature enough to be able to recognize what's happening.
Yeah.
And to be a child, you grew up in it your whole childhood.
But it was different. It was a different flavor. Like once I went to college, it hit hyperdrive. Like in a way, like we were kind of shielded from it.
Because of where you were. Yeah.
Like my education, ice skating, all these different things. And you know, maybe one day we can just do a podcast on the idea of fame, because I have so many thoughts.
Yeah.
And I've like, really
we have that, and we have to do another podcast about dating.
Yes. Oh my God.
I have been talking forever.
Oh my God. I have so much to tell you. You have no idea.
I know. So you have to come back soon then, because I have so many questions, because I had a conversation with someone in your age group. And after I talked to you, I did a podcast with Georgia and her friend Tatum, who were seniors in high school, about this hookup culture.
What they say.
And Georgia had no knowledge, and Tatum was like, "Oh, that's totally how it works in my school." And I'm like, "Mind is blowing."
Oh, I have.
And
so
then I
much
took
to share.
that conversation and had a conversation with someone else who is in the dating world, and about how he believes. I don't want to talk about it. We need a podcast.
I'll come back whenever you want me.
Well, please, because that is such a good conversation. But this one has been amazing.
It has.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Happy is my goal in life. And I am so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. Really proud of you.
Thank you.
You should be proud of yourself. It is not easy to look in the mirror and go, this is not okay. And to take the steps to really change it. You can look in the mirror and say, this is not okay. But taking the steps to change it is monumental. It is so difficult. It is a rebuilding from the foundation of your whole life in some ways. You may not have to actually rebuild it, but you definitely have to reflect on it and decide, keep or toss for everything.
Yeah.
that is an enormous undertaking. So if you are not already really proud of yourself, I am proud enough for you. Because it's huge. Good for you. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yes. I can't wait to see where you are a year from now.
Oh my God. Probably still living in my parents' house.
Oh, who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody cares about that.
I know. Post-COVID, it's like, who doesn't live in their parents' house?
Doesn't matter. Be here today, which you are. But a year from now, I think how you feel is what is going to be different.
I can't wait to see.
And I can't wait to see either. It's so exciting. Well,
thank you.
Thanks for coming on and talking to me about all of this. It's really powerful. And for other people listening, sometimes when you get in a rut, it's really hard to see how to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And when you hear someone talk about how they got out of theirs, it inspires other people to try and get out of their own. I think that's a huge gift today that you gave to the people listening here as well. And, some parents may have kids just like you. And I get this a lot from listeners. Not usually about their kids, but about their wives. I have a lot of men who listen.
Really?
I do. I have a predominantly male audience, which I find shocking.
Well, if the bird adjacent makes sense.
Yes, it does. Well, I like to think it's because I'm a total MILF, but I mean, whatever.
You are. Absolutely.
I mean, Bert, whatever. But no, what I hear a lot is, my wife has been saying this to me for years and I never understood it until I heard you talking about it with Kathy or whoever.
Wow.
And now I get what my wife is saying. So hopefully this happens for a parent and their child.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
That would be.
To have a parent have an adult child who is off in a ditch and have the parent go, oh, hold on here. I see this differently. Because I think sometimes parents forget or don't see maybe their children as separate and complete individuals that have their own path. Mm-hmm. And that your job is to help them on that path, not the path you want.
You can say that again.
Not my path. It's your path.
Yeah.
You have your own path and you're undeniable in it. You've made yourself undeniable in it.
Yeah.
And undeniable is undefeatable.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's the truth.
This maybe could be a final thought of mine, but I keep thinking about how when you're caught in an avalanche, in order to figure out which way is up, you're supposed to spit. And
interesting.
I think not, when in doubt, spit, but I think there are subtle actions that you can take to find your right direction. And whether that's spitting when you're in a snowbank or asking for help or just talking to your dog and being like, I can't stop drinking or whatever it is, like verbalizing it, reaching out, going for a walk, whatever it is, like one small action will lead to larger change. Mm-hmm. And when in doubt, spit.
When in doubt, spit. I love it. My people probably say that all the time. When in doubt, spit.
I love Southerners. I do.
We're not bad people. I love Southerners too. There's a lot of great things about being raised in the South, and there's some that aren't so great.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma down there.
Same with California.
Yeah, everywhere. There's trauma everywhere.
There's trauma everywhere, and there's drama everywhere.
That's the truth.
And sometimes the drama is just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
And this happens here. I can't tell you how many people ask me questions about living in California, and I go, well, if you put it that way, it does sound pretty shitty. Yeah. But I actually love living out here.
Oh, man.
But if you put it like that, anyway, we could keep talking forever. So we have to just shut it up. We just shut up. You shut up. I shut up.
Okay.
I love you.
I love you too.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. It's really honor, privilege, destiny, whatever you want to call it. Like, I feel so much gratitude to have this space to talk to you, and everything you share with me always illuminates something else for me.
Oh, wow. Well, I've learned a ton from you as well.
Thank you.
Not just from this book, but from about so much stuff, the dating stuff, and about how really growth is kind of the same. Even though it's individuated, it sort of happens the same way for all of us. Is an act of discovery and mistake, and redirecting and discovery and mistake, self-reflection. All these pieces you're doing, I did too. So it makes us all kind of the same, and it makes us all able to do it, which is what I think people don't realize, is that we are all able to change.
It's about progress, not perfection.
That's right. And it's about just keep learning. Just keep learning. That's it. Well, I love you, Paulina
I love you
Pinsky.
so much.
I'll see you soon. We'll talk about dating soon.
Oh, I can't wait. Literally whenever.
That's going to be great.
I live here now, so.
I know. How about next week?
Great. I literally will come.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.